Thanks.
Good evening, citizens and guests, council and staff. Colleen, we ready to go? Let's do it.
Mayor Cernanek.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckman.
Here.
Councilmember Brinkman.
Here.
Councilmember Cole.
Here.
Councilmember Stallman.
Here.
Councilmember Stein.
Here.
Councilmember Valdez.
Present.
If you could all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before we go too far into the agenda, we have some changes on the agenda items. So we've added and moved items from the consent agenda onto general business, 9C and 9D. So folks, please take note if you have an old version that might have been the first posted, that may be out of date. Any other items for consideration on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move forward, looking for a motion on the minutes to be approved.
I have a motion. This is a motion based on the clerk certification, the November 18th video, as the minutes for the November 18th, 2014 regular meeting of the City Council be approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Council ready to vote?
The vote is unanimous. The motion carries.
Okay. And tonight, as our first item under citizens' comments, we have some awards to present. I'm going to step down and do the appropriate thing of shaking some hands for those that are present, and the Mayor Pro Tem will read the names as we go along. I'm always quite excited about the calendar. My mother loves to get one, and she lives in Ohio. So.
This will be the 2015 Littleton Calendar and Annual Report Photography Contest winners, and they'll be presented by the Mayor. This evening, the Littleton City Council is pleased to recognize the winners of the 2015 Littleton Calendar and Annual Report Photography Contest. Members of the Littleton Fine Arts Committee selected the winners from 223 prints submitted by 54 entrants. The popular calendar is now available at the Littleton Center, Bemis Library, the Littleton Museum, Town Hall Arts Center, and from the calendar's generous sponsors. And the major sponsors are Colorado Business Bank, Chase Bank, Bradford Auto Body Incorporated, Western Welcome Week, Life Care Center of Littleton, Hudson Gardens and Events Center, Rely Local Littleton, Steinley Realty Services Incorporated, Littleton Adventist Hospital, PDA Road Gear, Stu Maher Commonwealth Realty Services, and Aspen Grove Lifestyle Center. Additional sponsors are Lautenbach Insurance Company, LLC, and Henry's Jewelry Company, Incorporated. And the winners are, and I'll read them off, and when I see somebody beginning to move on it, I'll go to the next one so we can keep them going down. Please try to stay in order, but it's not essential. January, Paul Lindberg. February, Stephen Johnson. Peggy Waite, March. April, Lori Denhalter. May, John Balkunas. June, Daniel Smith. July, Matthew Wirt. August, Constance Nelson. September, Peggy Dietz. October, Ann Barheit. November, Andy Poland. December, Kayla Finnan. The cover, Doug Reed. And he's our man upstairs in the control tower.
Oh, yeah. Good job.
And I just want to say the Littleton City Council congratulates the 2015 calendar winners for their skill in capturing the beauty of the city.
Thank you and congratulations. We now move on to unscheduled public appearances. This is an opportunity for any citizen to express opinions or ask questions regarding city services, council policies, or other matters of community concern that are not part of the scheduled agenda. Generally, an immediate response should not be respected, and typically issues are referred to city staff for follow-up information or research and reported back to the council and the individual that initiated the comment or inquiry. If any citizen would like to speak during unscheduled public appearances, please complete a green citizen card, which are located on the table at the entrance to the council chambers, and please provide the green card to the city clerk or leave at the podium. Is anyone interested in unscheduled public appearances? Pam?
My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live at Crestline in Nevada in District 1. Two things tonight, and I believe I can talk about something that's not on the public hearing, but is on the agenda. And I'm sure I'll be stopped if I can't, but I have an anecdote related to the increase in the time of the attorney function in the city. And my anecdote comes from the time when the planning board was considering the first two urban renewal plans. And I wrote email to the city to ask about, first, what was the CRS site? Ken Philman showed up at a planning board. Never happened before. He cited CRS, but didn't give the paragraph, and I wrote to ask, what's the paragraph? And I got a response, so then I learned about the CRS and the items that were required by the city in terms of schedule meetings. So I wrote more email asking, when would the meetings be that are required by CRS? There was an exchange during a week of a number of emails back and forth. None of my emails ever went to the scheduling function by the city clerk. I did end up getting a letter from, let's say, the management function and the attorney function in the city government saying that I was asking for legal advice. Really wasn't. I think the email's pretty clear, and I'm willing to share it with anybody if you want it, but during that time, all of my emails were routed to the attorney function, not the cheaper clerk function. And since I was asking about schedule, and since the clerk function is cheaper, I would expect somewhere in there it would go to the clerk. And I would have stopped. There was no need for me to ask more questions if I got the answer to my question. But that never happened until I got a letter that said no more staff time would be spent on my inquiry. Now, right before that, I realized that the Lift Board had released a document with the answer to my question. And in fact, it's dated August 26th, so it was done a couple weeks before I asked. So apparently it was available to the city. It just had become publicly posted the weekend before. And so on Monday I said, well, you know, all those scheduled dates are actually in what Lyft just posted, so I guess I got my answer, but not from the city. So when you're considering increasing the attorney function, somehow this particular request got routed through the attorney over and over and over. There was a lot of attorney time spent. It was not well spent. As a citizen, I'm concerned about that. And If only my email had gone to the schedule function somewhere, the clerk function, it would have been over and much more cheaply. So I'm going to, and then of course the other issue is that City Council has approved the first 2 urban renewal plans. In spite of an objection by Arapahoe County, one of the taxing entities who are impacted by this decision. Maybe we wouldn't need the attorney extra time if we didn't contest that. So I'm going to ask you to consider a different route. Don't increase the attorney time, just change the approach. I have one other short request. On Thursday, you're going to meet with Planning Board. I'd like you to ask Planning Board to take up corridor plans, specifically Santa Fe, Littleton Boulevard, and Broadway, because they can contribute to the urban renewal effort now in progress, and we need all hands on deck. So that's my request for Thursday. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Doug?
Is it so? Doug Clark, 4th District. On September 16th of this year, the City Council passed Resolution Number 88, the guts of which are on the overhead. The title and the meat of the resolution is that no urban renewal project would move forward, meaning be approved by Council, without the full approval and support of the impacted taxing entities. Yet, when you approved the Santa Fe and Columbine urban renewal plans on November 4th, less than 2 months later, you had only the approval of 3 of the impacted taxing entities. Arapahoe County did not support nor approve of the urban renewal plans that you passed that evening. When the question was asked how the City Council could pass the urban renewal plans in light of Resolution 88 without the approval of the county, the city manager, Michael Penny, made the comments which are now on the overhead. The essence of Mr. Penny's statements is that the resolution says the city staff will negotiate, not lift. That he will lead the negotiations, not Mr. Rees. So the IGA the county refused to agree to doesn't count because that IGA was negotiated by lift, apparently. Mr. Penny also said that the resolution refers to projects, not plans. Issues such as the amount of tax increment revenue retained by lift will be negotiated by him with the taxing entities on a project-by-project basis, not by lift. And it will be negotiated on a project basis, not on a plan basis. Since there are no urban renewal projects, according to Mr. Penny, there's nothing to be negotiated and nothing that can be negotiated. No one knows what those projects will be. It's a mystery, whether they will be apartments or office buildings, so he claimed. So that brings up the question, what's the purpose of the intergovernmental agreements that you have with Littleton Public Schools and South Suburban Parks and Rec and the letter of agreement with urban drainage and flood control that are before you for approval this evening? Your city manager says that all the stuff contained in those agreements will actually be negotiated in the future by him for each project on a project-by-project basis. And another question arises. How could you, in good faith, send council members to meetings with the boards of Littleton Public Schools and South Suburban and then claim that those agreements don't count, that the agreements that really count are the ones that are going to be negotiated by the city manager for each project? You've highlighted the differences between a plan and a project while at the same time conflating a project with tax increment financing. You claim that there is no impact to the county from any possible project which may be done in any of the plans, and yet at the same time claim that the impact to the taxing entities comes from the projects rather than from tax increment financing. Otherwise, you would need the approval of the taxing entities when you instituted tax increment financing, which you did on the Santa Fe plan without agreement of the county. In your effort to dance around your approval of the urban renewal plans without the county's approval, you have discredited the IGAs you intend to approve this evening. And in fact, your own commitments to the citizens of Littleton through Resolution 88. Thank you.
Appreciate your concerns, Doug. The difference and probably the nuance that we're all aware of is that tax increment financing is under the purview of the LIFT Board or the Urban Renewal Authority. Other components that might be part of a financing agreement would include other items where the city could participate in beyond TIF financing. So that's why some of that distinction. Anyone else on public comments? Yes, Linda.
Let's see if I can get this open here. Okay, I am here tonight. I'm not talking about Littleton Boulevard or Broadway. I'm just talking about LIFT and city finances. So what has the city paid for urban renewal? These are, what I'm going to show you tonight are urban renewal expenses based on monthly financial reports as published on the web. And there are many more expenses not accounted for in this presentation, such as significant staff time, time to use to produce the Littleton report, time to produce other literature, printing, postage, and other consulting. So one of the things I wanted to say up front is City Council promised urban renewal will not cost the taxpayers any money. Well, when we start looking at the warrants that are published monthly on the website, and this is April, we can see quickly here that the Communications Infrastructure Group was paid $8,108. And what is this Communications Infrastructure Group? They're the firm handling the public relations for LIFT, and during the 11/4/2014 meeting regarding the Santa Fe and the Columbine Urban Renewal Plan, Ann Ricker said that the city made CIG resources at her disposal. So you're paying for those resources, and LIFT is also paying for those resources. So here's an example of what was in the October LIFT board report, and here's what the Communications Infrastructure Group reported to the LIFT about what their accomplishments have been for the time being. This is the financial statement as of October 20th, 2014, and you can see on the bottom, circled in red, CIG was paid $8,726. The contract is for $7,800 per month, and the only amount that has been charged to date is the $8,726. So let's look at May. May, you had $11,000 in CIG expenses. In June, you had $8,000 in CIG expenses, and you also had Ricker Cunningham of $2,600 and change. And then in July, you had $7,000 for the Communication Infrastructure Group, $7,800. And then August is missing. September, we have $1,236 for Jim Reese, who's the executive director. So here's a summary of the expenses. So for a total of the Communications Infrastructure Group, we had $27,000. Ricker Cunningham, $2,600. Jim Reese, $1,236. And estimates that have been mentioned in public for the Arapahoe County Urban Renewal Outreach is $23,000 for a total of $53,000. So this is only April through July and September 2014. We're missing August, obviously October and November, so that amount will increase substantially. So what's going on financially with LIFT? Here is the budget versus actual. Here you have the consultants and surveyors for a total of $139,000. So the budget for LIFT is $142,000. So the available funds as of 11/26 is $2,276. I don't know the timeframes, but the budget is what was taken from the October board financials. So I don't know, or I can't estimate additional expenses that have been incurred or accrued, but the impact is Lyft can't fund or pay its bills. They have attorneys at $185 an hour. Consultants, Ricker Cunningham is contracted for $175. The executive director is $130, and CIG is $7,800 per month plus mileage and expenses, and that hasn't been constantly or consistently charged for the city or on Lyft's books. So, anyways, unless you fund Lyft, I don't know where they're going to get the money. But the bottom line is you said that urban renewal won't cost the taxpayers anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Or Carol.
I'm Carol Breezak. I live in the 4th District. I want to comment on some of the agenda items that are on the consent. The first one being your resolution to set the ballot title for the March 3rd election. I'd like to express my concern about the change in the voting law that was made at the state level, and would urge that any IGA that you guys come up with Arapahoe County, Douglas, and Jefferson, that you honor the charter, which is a 30-day requirement. If you go by Title I rather than Title 31, you're going to get us a 22-day state residency requirement with a 0 residency requirement for the city. So please pay attention on the IGA. The second one is on the IGAs with the Littleton Public Schools, South Suburban, and Urban Drainage. I would like to have an explanation of how this will be implemented. Doug expressed some of my concerns. Semantics, project plan. Are you going to be negotiating with each project that comes up with all the taxing entities? I don't see anything in here that shows that the Lyft Board is going to negotiate with the city, but we are subject to the TIF as well. And I'd like for it to be very clear, I'd like to see this council vote on what percentage of TIF they're willing to give to urban renewal. I also want to explain a little bit on the school district. On that mill levy override, you're leaving a lot of money on the table, and not you particularly, but the state, the way the law is written. They will actually be over-collecting on the mill level and the bond, mill levy and bond. And when they return it to the school district, they can only return what the school district is obligated to get, which will be less than what they collected. So they're going to be left with some money on the table of taxes that were collected for the mill levy and the bond that have no place to go. They can't go to the school district because the school district has already received what they're entitled to, and it won't be returned to the taxing entities, but yet the state will end up backfilling any shortfall. I want to piggyback on Linda's concern. I, too, am concerned about the finances. We know that Lyft is just about out of money. We know that the city has been footing some of the bills. We have some legal matters that are going to have to be cleared up. Arapahoe County has issue with your impact reports on 2 of your plans. No doubt there will be 2 more as a result of the meeting tonight. The county assessor disagrees with the inclusion of the ag land, so there will be that legal battle. And you have just been filed, it's been filed in the court from Gas Express. They filed a complaint with their inclusion in the Columbine Square Urban Renewal Plan. So that's 4 legal matters as of right now that I'm aware of. You're supposed to have an arm's length relationship with urban renewal, which is what you've told us several times. It's the coziest arm's length relationship I have ever seen. And Lyft is out of money. How much is this council willing to spend of our taxpayer dollars to further the efforts of urban renewal? And that is a question that I would like to have answered. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Carol. Anyone else in public comment? Seeing none? Oh.
Got one.
Yes, please. Okay. Withdrawn then. Okay. Council reminder that with comments and reports, we've moved these to the front of the agenda, and we're looking for timeliness and efficiency. First up, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. We continue our 60 seconds of good news about the City of Littleton. One, I have 14 items, by the way. One, the Historic Preservation Board approved modifications to the buildings that will be the new home of the View House at the west end of Main Street. It will be a total of 6,680 square feet with a second floor addition, balcony, and an outdoor patio. Two, the Hampton Inn has sold to an out-of-state group who's about to invest approximately $2 million to renovate it. And you guys know we're working with Marriott Courtyard for across the street on the south side of Hampton as well. Three, the Richardson family of Greeley paid $77 million for the 350-unit 5151 downtown Littleton buildings on South Rio Grande Street up the road. That puts the sales price at $220,000 per unit. Four, Care 10 went into service, staffed with a paramedic and a physician's assistant. Councilman Stallman's been part of that. They respond Monday through Friday from 9 to 5 on non-emergency calls. They have established relationships with other community providers to serve uninsured and underinsured patients. Five, a number of employees from several departments have been trained on our new contract management software. It will allow us to better manage and control the renewal and expiration of city contracts, which we've never done a fabulous job in the past of doing. We are now. Six, by the end of the year, 30 employees will have completed either the 4-hour Greenbelt or 40-hour Black Belt process efficiency training with the City of Denver's Peak Academy. The graduates have learned new techniques for problem solving, process review, and efficiency. And in 2015, as you remember from the budget, this was, I think several of you brought this back from NLC. They're going to be going through different departments and teaming up and looking for efficiencies and process improvements throughout 2015 and beyond. Number 7, the payroll software upgrade is complete. Next up will be online timesheets and paperless expense reimbursement. 8, the Littleton Police are getting closer to deploying the Community Service Volunteer Patrol Program with the acquisition of a 2014 Ford Escape that will be used for the volunteers to provide non-emergency services. So if you see Councilmember Cole behind the wheel, run. The vehicle was funded by a federal grant. The CSV team will provide such services as residential vacation checks, puffer patrol, and supplementing traffic control. Puffer patrol is obviously idling vehicles. Some of you may have had some other ideas. Number 9, Click and Fix Littleton is now live. You can download it. Hopefully you all have it on your iPhones or whatever phone you use. It is a citizen relationship management app that allows reporting of non-emergency issues or concerns 24 hours a day. Things like potholes, downed trees, graffiti, and the like can be reported and tracked by citizens and staff through the resolution of the problem. 10, Economic Development staff held the 5th business education session this year. We had over 28 business owners attending the education called 6 Steps for Small Business Success. The follow-up feedback was really positive. It also provided research and pre-launch assistance for a crowdfunding platform for a medical device company. 11, many of you attended the Candlelight Walk Friday. New this year were the dancing trees, the breast cancer tree, and the snowflake display on the bridge. The lights on the trees will stay on every night until 11 p.m. on March 8th to recognize the city's 125th birthday, and the holiday lights will go off in early January. 12, Cindy Lou Who, you all remember Cindy Lou Who, portrayed by librarian Val Fetters, will read the Dr. Seuss classic, The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, followed by the movie at the Alamo Draft House on December 22nd at 11 a.m. Tickets for this family fun event are $6, and all proceeds go to Bemis Library. 13, tickets are still available for a holidays evening at the museum on December 14th. There will be wagon rides, refreshments, and music. Purchase tickets at the library or museum. And last but not least, the Elf Crawl sold out at 390 tickets on Friday. Staff planned the event to promote Small Business Saturday, and feedback from the merchants has really been positive. There were 7 LPD officers on foot patrol who reported no issues at all. According to one of our division commanders, quote, the crowd was happy and well-mannered. Looked like a younger crowd having fun. And our mayor attended as well.
Part of that younger crowd.
So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Cole?
I won't take time for announcements.
Councilmember Stallman?
No report. Merry Christmas.
Councilmember Valdez?
None tonight, thank you.
Councilmember Brinkman?
No report.
Councilmember Stein?
No report.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckman?
No report.
We should try this more. I do have
Go
3
through my
items.
14 again.
I do have 3 items to mention. One is a reminder to council of the breakfast on Thursday with the planning board. Number two is breakfast next Tuesday with CML as well as legislators. We do have a couple of RSVPs on that, but there's also some competing events, but it'll be interesting nonetheless. And next Tuesday with our session, we have 5 items of substance, so pay attention as your packets come out this week.
Can I renege? I forgot to mention the Rotary Breakfast with Santa at the Buck Center on Saturday starting at 7:30 a.m.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we move to the consent agenda items, Section 7 on our agenda. We have items A through J. The consent agenda items may be adopted by a simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title. Prior to a vote on the motion, any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member. Consent agenda item 7A is ordinance 40-2014. It's an ordinance on first reading, adding section 1 of chapter 12 of article 6 to the city code to establish an electronic citation surcharge. Item 7B is ordinance 43-2014. It's an ordinance on first reading, granting an easement to XL Energy, and it schedules the second reading later in December. Item 7C is Ordinance 44-2014. It's an ordinance on first reading granting 2 easements to XL Energy. Again, it also schedules the second reading later in December. Item 7D is Ordinance 46-2014. It's an ordinance on first reading amending Ordinance number 28, Series of 2013, known as the Annual Appropriation Bill for all municipal purposes for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2014 and ending December 31, 2014. And that's a cleanup item. Item 7E is an ordinance 47-2014. It's an ordinance on first reading regarding judges and court administrator compensation, and both 7D and 7E also schedule second readings for later in December. Item 7F is Ordinance 49-2014. It's an ordinance on first reading amending Title III to remove the licensing requirements for peddlers and hawkers, coin-operated vending and amusement machines, taxi cabs, and pool and billiard halls, and to provide that the registration and license fee for rental property owners be set annually by council resolution. This is an effort to clean up our ordinances. Item 7G is a resolution. It's 133-2014. It's a resolution setting the ballot title to submit to the electors of the city for the March 3, 2015 special election, an amendment to include the addition of a new section of the city charter regarding urban renewal. Item 7H is Resolution 138-2014. It's a resolution granting emergency procurement authority to the city manager in cases of emergency affecting public property, health, peace, or public safety. This is addressing an issue that came up where we did not have that emergency authorization to deal with essentially a sinkhole in the middle of the street. That's how it came to us. Item 7I is Resolution 140-2014. It's a resolution approving intergovernmental agreements with Littleton Public Schools and South Suburban Parks and Recreation Districts, and a letter of agreement with the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District concerning inclusion of agricultural land into the Santa Fe Urban Renewal Plan and future mill levy use in urban renewal plans.
Hold that.
Thank you. Item 7J is a Resolution 141-2014. It's a resolution to approve an intergovernmental agreement with Arapahoe County for the use of Arapahoe County open space funds to be used for the design, permitting, and bid documents for the Riverside Downs Trail Improvement Project. Looking for a motion?
Motion to approve consent agenda items A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, J, K.
Second. Just J.
No K.
Just J.
Just J. Okay.
Yeah, Council, we have a motion and a second on consent agenda item.
The vote is unanimous. The motion carries.
Council, we now move to Section 9, which is...
Hold on.
Gotta go back.
I'm sorry. Deb, 7I.
Yeah, I pulled it. We had in citizen comments some questions that came up on that, and I think it's probably worthy some explanation, some information. City Manager, do you want to talk to some of those issues?
Certainly. So I think the question, and just for clarification with council, is how does Resolution 88 and these IGAs and LIFT, and how does it all tie together? And it is true that what you have been approving are plan areas. There are no projects within those plan areas, so as we have stated several times, there's no estimates of revenues versus expenditures versus the cost of public improvements or other uses of those TIF funds. The way that I see this working out is you, through your Resolution 88, said city staff will ensure that all taxing entities agree before any project financing moves forward in any fashion. The IGAs are essentially, in my view of this, the starting place of the negotiation for any financing mechanism that would move forward. We know, for example, that in the South Suburban one, in their paragraph 3, the district mill levy allocation, they want all the existing district mill levy being paid by the authority to the district. So we know that that's a starting place for negotiation. They're going to bring that to the table. I've got a copy of the IGA. We'll be working with it to the table. So they're not mutually exclusive, in my opinion, in any sense of the word. You have directed city staff to ensure that we don't move forward with any financing mechanism that does not have unanimous support. These IGAs identify the starting line for negotiation. So I think that's where that comes forward. And then I would fully expect, based upon your direction to city staff, aka me, that there is a report back to the council with what that mechanism is, what that looks like, and assurance that Resolution 88 has been met in its entirety and all entities are in support of that. And obviously, if that's not possible, then a project doesn't move forward based upon Resolution 88.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions from council?
Yeah, can you also address the relationship between, as far as the negotiating relationship between yourselves, LIFT, representatives, and the same entities?
So I think the legal requirement is with LIFT, a project developer is going to call LIFT, and they're going to say, I'm interested in doing a project there, start talking about the project. You all remember that the project itself still has to go through the land use component 100% through the planning board. This is strictly on the financing side of it. I would be notified of that, and I would be involved in that pursuant to Resolution 88 to ensure that your desires through that resolution are met. And I would report back to the City Council pursuant to your direction.
Thank you.
Other questions? Discussion among the council? Looking for a motion?
Motion to approve Resolution 140-2014.
Second. Okay. Council, we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, council ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilmember Cole voting no. The motion carries.
Thank you, council. Now we appropriately move on to Section 9. Thank you. First up in Section 9 is Resolution 142-2014. It's a resolution approving a new urban renewal plan known as the North Broadway Urban Renewal Plan. Applicant, Executive Director Reese.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Jim Reese, Executive Director of LIFT. Tonight, we are going to present 2 urban renewal plans, and we're going to do them in separate order, as opposed to last time where we tried to do them together. But we've got it together tonight, so we have it together. So tonight we're talking about the North Broadway plan, and I just wanted to kind of reiterate where we started with this, and that was with council's goals. Council directed that the city staff and LIFT work together to basically examine the commercial corridors within the city, 4 in particular, 2 you've already acted on, and determine what can be done to stimulate private investment in the corridors and try to get more economic development going in our commercial areas in the city. One of the tools to do that, amongst many, and the city manager can talk more about the other tools. But tonight we're talking about tax increment financing, which will be the tool that will be created when and if you approve these two urban renewal areas. And basically with tax increment financing, again, it's a finance tool. It is not a land use tool. I know we've had a lot of questions about will LIFT control land use in the city, and that's not true. The city planning department and the planning board will still have all the same powers as originally planned, even if these plans were not approved. But with tax increment financing, of course, what we're doing is we're using the new value created by a project to actually create the tax value that can be used to pay down the unusual improvements associated with redevelopment projects, and there are many. Particularly when you have old structures and things of that have to be removed. These are costs that are not normal compared to a piece of raw land. So that's what LIFT can go to. And actually, the TIF will be what we call gap financing. And that is a tool we have to go through, examine all of an owner and developer's pro forma to make sure that the tax dollars will be used to fill a gap and not create an unusual profit center for a project. And so we take that very seriously, and we examine every one of them and before we make any kind of agreement on providing any kind of tax increments. Again, the main goal, though, of an urban renewal plan is to prevent and eliminate slum and blight, and I'm going to let Ann Ricker from Ricker Cunningham explain the condition survey that was conducted for the North Broadway plan. And she can show you all the conditions that are present. Again, we have to find 4 out of 11, and Ann will demonstrate that we have definitely done that. Also, following council's direction, the plan does not include the use of eminent domain or condemnation of any form to acquire property within the urban renewal areas. All the transactions, all the acquisitions that will be done will be arm's length transactions conducted between an owner and a potential developer, or an owner and another owner in the same area. But we will not be using condemnation powers to do that. And also, the last thing I wanted to mention is council's also direction was that we would work cooperatively with the other taxing entities in the area, and as you heard earlier, that there are agreements in place with Littleton Public Schools, South Suburban, and Urban Drainage. Tonight we will provide documentation. We've done all the analysis required under the statute, and that all the corridors do qualify as urban renewal areas. Tonight's plan will show you all the conditions in the condition study and the potential economic impacts. So as far as the schedule is concerned for North Broadway, the condition study was conducted starting in April. Between April 14th and May 14th, there was a field investigation that went out and documented all the conditions of blight that are out and present in the North Broadway corridor. There was a public presentation of the findings in June, on June 16th, to the LIFT board as to show that all the conditions existed. The boundaries for the area were set by the LIFT board on the 15th. Of course, council has the ultimate authority on the boundaries. But the board passed a resolution recommending the adoption of these plans and the boundaries as set. Prior to setting the boundaries, though, the LIFT board set some criteria to narrow them down. Again, the original condition survey went out and looked at a very broad area, and then the LIFT board set some parameters to try to narrow that down. And one of the parameters was there will be no single-family owner-occupied structures included in the area. We're talking about commercial corridors here. So the idea was to try to get out single-family owner-occupied. That does not mean that single-family rental properties were not included. We also took out the housing authority parcels. There's quite a few, especially on Littleton Boulevard. There are some in the North Broadway area. The housing authority did come back, though, and asked to be included. So they are now back in. Facilities owned by churches or other religious organizations were taken out. And then the newly developed or redeveloped car dealership areas along Broadway were also removed because they're currently in great condition. And we had one owner actually request to be added back into the property that we had taken out, so they were added in as well. It was a multifamily project. After the boundaries were set and after the condition study was accepted by the authority, the public open house was conducted and owners' meetings were conducted on the 13th of October to show what the plan recommendations would be, and public input was received at that time. The LIFT board then acted on the 20th of October to pass a resolution, which I believe is in your packet, recommending council approval of the plan. The plan was also taken to planning board, again in conformance with the statute, to find that the plans conforms with the comprehensive plan, and that was actually started on the 10th of November and finished on, the 10th of November and finished on the 24th. And it was approved by the planning board at that time. County commissioners have received the impact report, and that was provided on the 31st of October, which was also governed by statute, 30 days before the public hearing. And we have the agreements, as I mentioned earlier, with Littleton Public Schools, South Suburban, and in this case, for North Broadway, we don't need any kind of agreement with urban drainage. It's not affected here. And we don't have agricultural land in North Broadway either, so that's not a consideration in this plan, as it was with the Santa Fe area. So we are here tonight for your consideration to talk about North Broadway, and hopefully that you'll consider approving it as an urban renewal area. City staff has made a change to the motion, and I think you have that there, a revision to section 6.12 regarding the starting of the tax increment clock at this time. With that, if there's any other questions for me, I'll turn it over to Ann.
Questions at this point in time? Seeing none?
No, I don't have any information that there are any landowners who wished to be removed from the area under consideration that were unresolved. Are there any unresolved issues?
Not to my knowledge. When we had the public meetings, there was no one that spoke or sent us a letter regarding the North Broadway corridor. I don't think that's the same for Littleton Boulevard, but for North Broadway, no.
I do have two addresses that have been provided to council for Littleton Boulevard, but none that I'm aware of for the North Broadway.
Yeah, that's what I understand.
Okay.
Thank you. Now, Ann.
Okay. Ann? And by the way, also with us tonight, of course, I should recognize the chairman of the LIFT board, Mr. Taylor, as well as Corey Hoffman's here, our attorney. So if you have any questions for either one of them.
There it is. Okay. Mayor and council members, thank you. We'll just jump right in. With regard to the North Broadway, the proposed North Broadway Urban Renewal Plan, just to remind all of you, the map that you're looking at, the yellow parcels are those that are proposed to remain in the Broadway Urban Renewal Area. The tan parcels, while surveyed along with the yellow parcels, were eliminated based on the criteria that Mr. Reese shared with you a moment ago. The net effect of the area is about 60 total acres and 84 parcels, including rights-of-way. You can see the parcel range from very, very small parcels to a single parcel that's just about 9 acres. And I think you can generally see, but the northern end of the area is the Rafferty Court Road. The school tends to serve as the east boundary, as well as the backside of several of the car dealerships that front the eastern edge of Broadway. On the south, we have, let's see, what's the south? Orchard. We have the creek running through, and then we've got the Ida residential area over on the west side. The purpose of the plan, and this slide and the next slide are very similar, and they really come right out of the statute in terms of what the purpose of any urban renewal plan really needs to be. And first and foremost, to reduce and eliminate and prevent the spread of blight. That's why you see the language mingled, where we cross-reference what was found within the conditions survey. So assuming those conditions were found, and they were, and presented in the survey document, the plan then is intended to remedy those conditions through private investment that would come forward in the area. Also, the second statement that comes from the statute is that the second purpose of the plan, in no particular order, is intended to promote local objectives as expressed in your community plan or comprehensive plan. And that's why we reference the comprehensive plan within the document. The objective, as I said, is very similar to the purpose, to eliminate those or alleviate the conditions of blight by actively promoting investment and reinvestment. And here we added commercial corridors because this is where we begin to customize the plan to meet the specific objectives of the city as identified within your comprehensive plan. Now, one thing that's come up sometimes, the whole issue of specificity within the plan has come up a number of times. And very intentionally, virtually every urban renewal plan throughout the state, because with the TIF provision, it can last 25 years, no longer than 25, but it can be less than that. To be too specific, you would essentially be telling property owners what they have to do with the property, and you have other documents that do that. You have zoning and standards and that. This document is not intended to tie their hands to any specific use, but the certainty that you all as council have is that we state throughout that this plan, this urban renewal plan, will be consistent with the comprehensive plan and any future amendments to that. In terms of the development and design objectives, along those same lines, there was a lot of concern throughout initially that this was a regulating document, and so we went to great lengths throughout all of the plans that you've seen to reiterate the point that wherever there is an authority of essentially an authority of the authority board to weigh in on things like design and that they are not doing that. They are leaving those controls where they are today with planning board, with city council, with the existing regulating documents that you have in place. In terms of general objectives, we speak to the redevelopment of properties. That goes without saying. And all of this is really for the purpose of generating revenue sufficient to fund public improvements. And, I bolded those things because it's very important. Public improvements unto themselves don't generate direct revenue. They might indirectly generate revenue in terms of incentivizing private property to develop and redevelop. But the idea here is that the revenue that is generated within these areas only comes from new private or development or redevelopment of parcels within these areas. And then again, the statute's very clear, and Mr. Reese referenced this in terms of that very thoughtful review that'll go on for any application for funding assistance. Those dollars have to be used for items of public benefit. They can't be used for things that essentially would be non-taxable, non-TIF increment generating items. They have to provide a benefit to the public. Now, this slide and the next one, we identify several objectives, development and design objectives. Objectives being the important word. They're not standards, they're not guidelines. That would be regulating. These are intention statements, and they came from both input that we got from the people that participated in our outreach, as well as your currently adopted plans. So you can see, again, we identify those first two important objectives or goals. And then we go on to speak about putting vacant and underutilized property into more productive use. We address your issue of sustainability that you did speak about in your economic development plan. We talk about leveraging public investment in planned improvements, and that relates directly back to what I just said, that those TIF dollars, need to be spent on items of public benefit. We talk about the public realm. There's a lot of talk in your comprehensive plan about connectedness, river corridors, parks, open spaces, keeping those, improving on those, and encouraging the use and connection of those. And then also to encourage growth and stability in local businesses. This item came up through the LIFT board discussion at one of our meetings, that they wanted to make sure that that was an important objective that was stated in all of the plans. Here again, this is our reference to the comprehensive plan, and while this is of course important for you all to consider, the primary audience for this was the planning board, and so to that end we went to great lengths to read the document from cover to cover. We also referenced the economic development plan, and some of the board members even acknowledged and appreciated the fact that we didn't just leave it at the comprehensive plan, since both are fairly new. And to that end, and what we discussed with them were several references, direct, taken verbatim from those documents, whether they're specific references to the use of tax increment financing, of which there are many in those documents, but also how we envision these areas redeveloping with private investment in a manner that is consistent with what you've identified as a goal within those documents. So here we cite specifically a dynamic Littleton. Here is where you speak specifically about redevelopment, putting properties into more productive use. Here is where you reference the parks and open space and trails that do traverse and go through these areas, and how they can be better improved and used more effectively by citizens and visitors. The connected Littleton, this is where you talk about your trails, but you also talk about your transit and connections to gathering places. Clearly, any redevelopment in these areas, being in these important commercial corridors, would provide that link. And then finally, you talk about your transformative actions, focusing on your activity areas and your corridors. Again, as Mr. Reese said, that's exactly what these plans are intended to do, which is to provide a financing mechanism to advance those goals. And then with regard to a distinctive Littleton and your references to history, and we spoke about this last time, and I thought I just would mention it again, that the state historic preservation, the national historic preservation, it talks extensively about the use of tax increment financing in these areas, because it provides an incredibly valuable financial mechanism that can really make the difference between keeping a building historic and making those improvements and not being able to afford to do that. So we just wanted to reinforce that again. And then finally, we go forward in terms of directing growth and your definition of corridors. So in terms of the economic plan, again, you reference throughout the use of tax increment financing as a financing mechanism that should be considered, and you talk about your land inventory, and again, how can you encourage private investment and reinvestment in those properties. Here are several of the priorities that were identified. You can see the 13, but the ones we thought were most relevant here: obviously the strategic revitalization along major corridors, the updating of aging shopping centers, and restoring underperforming shopping centers. Again, the first two opportunities identified in that report were infill development and redevelopment. We highlight here the authority activities, and again, because LIFT wanted to go to great lengths to make it very clear what powers they were relinquishing, deferring to you, and those that would stay within their purview, all of which are authorized under the Act. Investment in the public realm, encouragement of development, obviously consistent with existing standards, and careful, judicious use of limited resources. Here, in terms of implementation, we reiterate that it'll be used to remedy those adverse conditions. And then we also speak here about going forward with the plan and how it might be amended over time, the review process for that. Also, we speak here about some of the items that might ultimately be considered those items of public benefit. Now, we make the point here that while each of those ties back to a finding within the condition survey, by identifying them here, it in no way commits LIFT that they have to spend it on those items. This is really intended to be informative so that people can see some of the items that tax increment financing dollars may be used on. So we do that there. Additional powers of the authority, environmental remediation, property acquisition and disposition, the assumption being, because as Mr. Reese said, there is, not the use of condemnation, but arm's length acquisition, but then disposition to the private sector. No intention of LIFT being a developer. Construction, reconstruction, eliminating unsafe conditions, and entering into intergovernmental and redevelopment agreements with the private sector and property owners in the area. The review process we talk about here is we just didn't want there to be any question about the fact that any amendment to these plans wouldn't be as open as the process was in developing the plans at the beginning. Here we talk about who can propose modifications to the plan, obviously you all, as well as board members, but also stakeholders within the area can come forward. And, I guess that's it. Mr. Reese mentioned a couple things I wanted to cover. In terms of the conditions that were found, there's 11 factors of blight within the statute. All 11 were found. And that's really not unusual in an established commercial corridor. Also, in terms of impacts, we were asked by LIFT to go over and above, I think you might remember, what the statute requires, which is the impact just to the county is really what needs to be documented and shared 30 days prior to the hearing. They went ahead and had us do an impact report for every single taxing entity within the area. And in some ways it gets a little challenging, especially on Littleton Boulevard, which we'll get to, because you have some special districts that only impact some of the parcels within the area. I can tell you that's an amazingly, this condition of all these layers of districts is really a challenge. It's an additional challenge for redevelopment and development in your community that not every community has. So it was a little tricky going back to do the impact report to make sure we assign that to the right parcels, but I think we did that pretty effectively. And it's really quite modest. I think one other thing I wanted to touch on, and it'll be interesting to talk to Arapahoe County about this when we get in front of them, but when you have an area that you're putting a plan in place to be ready for investment, and as a real estate economist, I can tell you that it makes all kinds of sense because of where we are in the real estate cycle in Denver. But it's interesting because the analysis we did, and we would do this, we've done it in every community we've worked in, and we stand by it, is we approach it just like any corridor redevelopment strategy. Without knowing what people's intentions are, and this not being a regulating document, we look at the market, we say, okay, where are some of the parcels that are underdeveloped, where there's an inverse relationship between the improvement value and the land value. There's public investment that's coming that private sector investment might want to leverage. We did market forecasts to come up with value assumptions in that. And then we made a forecast within this area of what we thought might happen over the next 25 years. Just so you know, the methodology has been proven out in over 60 urban renewal plans in the state, several for Arapahoe County, so this isn't unfamiliar to them. But that's how we came up with it. At the end of the day, what will it actually be? Will be completely dependent on the private sector, as it should be. So I just want to make sure you knew that was our methodology.
Council, questions for Ms. Ricker? Okay, seeing none. Additional? City Manager, any?
No, Mayor.
Okay. With that, thank you, and stay on call. And I'll now open the public hearing at 7:34. There are 9 on the roster, 6 having, all of them indicating opposition, and 6 of them indicating that they'd like to speak. What I will do is read a name and put someone then also on notice that is on deck, and when they get called, we'll try to go to the next one. So the first one is Paul Bingling. And on deck, Bruce Myers.
Good evening, Council. Paul Bingham, 236 West Delaware Circle in Littleton. The rules for this thing run 55 pages, the Colorado Revised Statutes. It's a bunch of stuff. Part of it is not really clear. Some of it's open to misinterpretation and all that sort of thing. That's what some folks are trying to get us involved in. Also, some in City Council said there will be no development in Littleton without urban renewal. I don't believe that. We say that there's a lot of development going on in Littleton right now. It's not a matter of it's not going to happen. It's going on now. You folks I don't know who put this out. It came from the Littleton flyer thing that goes out quarterly to everybody in town. Littleton Report, car dealerships reinvesting in Littleton. That's true. Has nothing to do whatsoever with urban renewal. Here's another one. This is from the second postcard that went out about your meeting at ACC. Would you rather have this or that? Well, that, of course, and that is being provided without any urban renewal whatsoever. You've seen these other pictures? Still true. Littleton Village, 77 acres, 250,000 square feet. Under construction. Littleton Commons, under construction. Service station at King Soopers, a separate project. King Soopers grocery store, that whole square is being redone with no urban renewal. Breckenridge Brewery, McDonald's Audi dealership, the Meadows at Platte Valley, McDonald's Mazda dealership. That's a lot of development that's going on right now as we speak. I say private enterprise is doing just fine in Littleton. Please table this thing, or better yet, vote no on this so-called plans. And Arapahoe County agrees, saying no in their 2 letters, although that doesn't apply directly to these things tonight. So, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Bruce Myers, and then Kurt Melstrom on deck.
Good evening. Never done this before. A little bit unusual. Yeah, so please bear with me. Thanks for giving me 4 minutes to speak. My name is Bruce Myers. I represent the Littleton Professional Building at 709 West Littleton Boulevard. I'm the trustee of the trust. And I haven't had a chance to look over your renewal plan. I noticed that you have said that you let everyone know about this at their last known address. Our last known address has been the same address for 53 years. We've received no notification about any type of blight on our property. My father bought the property in 1971. It's an office building. We have tenants who have been there since it was built, 65. They've run their entire careers there. We have tenants that have come in, startups. 2 employees now have 7 employees. People have had run their entire careers since the 70s there. Over the last few years, I took over managing the property in 2004 after the previous manager that had it for 25 years essentially let it run down. He pretty much turned it over to me in not that great a shape. It took me about 4 years to get the inside of the building to run correctly, and we spend about $5,000 a year in improvements, and we're working on the outside of the building. And I would really appreciate if you would tell me what the blight is that we have at our property. And also, we would like to request to be excluded from accepting any taxpayer dollars to improve our property. We're capitalists. We're private investors. You know, we offer a nice place for people. The people that come there enjoy staying there. They're happy there. A lot of them live in the neighborhood. A lot of them have just expanded from their homes, and they like it. And I know my neighbor is getting ready to spend quite a bit of money on his property to improve his property. We want our property to be nice. We think it's a nice building built in the 60s. It has that, I don't know, I can't think of the word that you call that kind of Art Deco. It's kind of that Art Deco look. You know, when it used to expanded out of downtown Littleton in the 60s. So it has the Art Deco look. It's a very unique property. And once again, we've invested a lot in it. We continue to invest in it. Spruce it up, keep it look nice, keep people happy. Everybody seems to be happy that likes it. And we would like to be excluded. And thanks for giving me a chance.
Thank
you guys
you, Bruce.
Have a great night.
Could he repeat his address and
709 West Littleton Boulevard.
So
The 709 is the corner of Lakeview and Littleton Boulevard.
That's the other.
Yeah,
That's the
correct.
other.
It's the Littleton corridor, yes.
Mayor, can you make sure that people are testifying on the Broadway corridor?
Yes. This actually, as you enter your address, you're talking about the Littleton corridor. So when we talk about Littleton, please note that. So.
Yeah.
I got it.
That's okay.
You can come back.
We can remember that.
But that's why I asked for the repeat of the address.
And I'm sorry about that. Okay. Next,
Yeah.
Kurt Melstrom. And your address is on West Littleton Boulevard, which is not part of the North Broadway part. Kurt, is your... No. Yes. Okay. Pam Chadbourne. And on deck is Jeannie Erickson.
Pam Chadbourne, Crestline, Nevada, downtown Littleton. This is a map of the consolidated areas, which Lyft didn't provide, but I want you to see it because the total number of acres is about 450. The number of parcels is that or greater. This is a huge area for a city the size of Littleton, and I'm going to tell you just by Mr. Mayor, could you start the timer, please? Thank you.
Thank you.
Common sense tells me that this area is too large for public tax sharing for a city the size of Littleton. This would be fine for maybe Denver, a good start, but for Littleton, this is huge. And these two areas in particular attack a classic north part of Littleton. And I'm going to suggest that the south side of Littleton should be modern in that, but we ought to keep some character here in this whole combined Broadway Littleton Boulevard corridor. I also want to point out that several of these are residences, apartments. Up there, and Southview Tower and Bradley House, South Metro housing options are still included. So this is what I'd like you to do as a citizen who's concerned about the fiscal future of Littleton and the economic success. I don't think these plans are going to lead to that. I'd like you to vote against both of them. Ask city staff to produce fiscal, infrastructure, and planning analyses and tell us what we're going to get out of this, not the developers. Not sidewalks and streetlights. These should only be major public improvements. Then invite public input, which we did not get. We did not get to give input to these areas. And then update the economic plan and comprehensive plan, give that to Lyft, and let them update these plans. And by the way, this is a quaint business in a house that people love about Littleton. So these don't comply with state law. These are not drawn as narrowly as is needed to meet our objectives. And I'm going to point out number 4 there. Following such the hearing that's happening now, you may approve an urban renewal plan if you find that a feasible method exists for relocation of individuals and families who will be displaced by projects in decent, safe, sanitary dwelling, and relocation of business concerns as well. So let me point out that the proposed Broadway area has at least 184 units buildable per Arapahoe County. The Littleton Boulevard area has more, and even more residents. If you cannot assure that there is a feasible method to relocate all of these folks, I don't believe you can approve this plan legally tonight. At least I sure wouldn't vote for it. Arapahoe County's concerns are legitimate. There are no specifics here for what's being carried out. We don't know how to evaluate it. We can't evaluate it, and this is like a shell game. I'm very upset and negative about what seems to be happening here. Eminent domain and condemnation, if you really mean that we won't use them, put that in the economic plan and the comprehensive plan so it flows into this urban renewal plan. A resolution can be revoked or repealed any time. If you're serious, put it in here. So there's too much here for me to go over, but this is an iteration of what I'd like you to do with city staff. At least it's up there. It's not this or nothing. There's plenty of other tools. These areas should be much smaller. And there's no need for speed. You haven't shown us why these need to be rushed through. So my time's up, and let me quit there.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Jeannie, and then Linda on deck.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jeannie Erickson. I live in District 1. I don't believe urban renewal is the way for Littleton to finance their public improvements, such as make sidewalks bigger, replace overhead street lights. I thought that's what the taxes we're paying now were supposed to be doing for us taxpayers. Skimming money from schools, parks, urban renewal, or urban drainage, the city, the county, to give to urban renewal lift gives a huge amount of power to a non-elected board. Oh, and by the way, all of the entities are not on board. Arapahoe County is not, and you are not honoring your resolution stating you would not move forward with urban renewal unless all of the taxing entities were in favor. 30 years ago, urban renewal was used to create Riverfront Marketplace at the corner of Santa Fe and Bowles. I've heard the slum and blight experts say that is the past. Well, millions of dollars were lost by schools, the city, and bondholders. Riverfront Authority, the urban renewal of the day, said they would not use condemnation. All of the properties were condemned. After being open for only 4 years, it sat vacant for 9, finally being sold for a steal. We have been told not to worry about the past failure of urban renewal in Littleton. It's in the past. May I kindly remind you that those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Siphoning tax dollars for 25 years is not a good way to get businesses to come to Littleton. Businesses will come to Littleton because it is the right fit for them and because they like the uniqueness of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Linda?
I'm Linda Knufinke. I live between the Santa Fe South Blighted area and the Santa Fe Mid Blighted area. I wanted to mention that
Lyft approved these plans before they were written. So I don't think Lyft even knows what's in it. And then tonight we heard that Section 6.1-2, I think, has been revised without the Lyft knowing this. So it's kind of concerning, despite the fact that Lyft's attorney cautioned them against approving a ghost plan. So I also wanted to mention on page 5 of your urban renewal plans, the big, huge map. We had said, or the consultants have said earlier, based on the July 21st Lyft meeting and the June 16th Lyft meeting, that properties that have been recently redeveloped and remodeled, such as car dealerships, should be excluded. But I will present to you tonight, there's a couple properties on your listing. It's property number 7, 93, 104, and 106 that may be considered recently redeveloped car dealerships. And of course, the CarMax is excluded, and the Chrysler Realty is excluded. So what I wanted to do today is just talk about a couple things. If you approve these urban renewal plans, the success of these plans hangs on how they're managed. The more properties to manage, the more challenges there will be, especially when it gets down to aggregation and eminent domain. Yes, I use eminent domain because you can dismiss a resolution as easy as you pass one, as you have done before. So if Lyft and the city manages urban renewal process like they have been, we are in huge trouble, and there's every evidence now that Lyft is well on the road to failure. So to make these potential projects a success, council has to be realistic in terms of the quality and the quantity of resources. You can only manage a process with adequate resources and adequate management. Consultants are not the ones that you want driving the process. They're not vested in this community. You need to make drastic changes now to prevent another colossal failure, as in Riverfront. We also need urban renewal plans to make that make sense for our community. The citizens deserve more than a boilerplate that the board and its staff can change on a whim. You approved what you approved, errors and all. Any changes to the plan should go through the process as defined in state law and be properly noticed. And the law must be followed and not snubbed. And the plans approved by the Lyft board and the planning board should be the same as presented to you, and the same as presented to Lyft, and the same as presented to the planning board. For example, the Columbine and Santa Fe plans changed after the planning board determined the conformance to the comprehensive plan. We deserve transparency in the process, and when Lyft staff changes the plans willy-nilly, it doesn't serve you or the citizens of Littleton. Lyft and its staff shouldn't be able to change a plan on the fly. Otherwise, it really doesn't matter what you approved. It doesn't matter what Lyft approved. It doesn't matter what anybody approved, planning board, etc. So let's talk about the resolution you snubbed. First, you say that you won't go forward with urban renewal unless the agreement, you get agreement from your taxing partners. Well, when Arapahoe County says, wait a minute, you come back and say, well, that's not really what we meant to say. It turns out it's not the urban renewal plans, but projects. Really, now you're changing the intent. This is kind of pushing it. By the way, the Littleton Public Schools resolution says you are parties and not partners. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Linda. John Christofferson.
Here we go.
Sorry I didn't give you advance notice, John.
Good evening. John Christofferson, Deputy County Attorney with Arapahoe County. Again, I was asked by the Arapahoe County Board of County Commissioners to come and speak with you with regard to the North Broadway Urban Renewal Authority. The copy of the letter from Arapahoe County to Littleton has already been included in the record. While the county, again, is excited about continued development within Littleton and the prospect of additional growth, the county is concerned with several aspects of the North Broadway plan. We'll address some of these issues and an additional issue that is in the letter, but the letter has more detail to it. First, Colorado Revised Statute Section 3125-103, Subpart 9, provides the definition of an urban renewal plan. The definition reads in part, urban renewal plan means a plan as it exists from time to time for an urban renewal project. It doesn't state that a plan is there and someday there will be a project. It is for a project. The board has continued to say, the council has continued to say that they don't have any projects. Because the North Broadway Urban Renewal Plan does not include any projects, this plan cannot exist. Second, the county impact report accompanying the North Broadway plan is deficient. Colorado Revised Statute Section 3125107, subpart 3.5, requires the impact report to include, quote, the estimated duration of time to complete the urban renewal project, end quote, and, quote, an estimate of the impact of the urban renewal project on county revenues and on the cost and extent of additional county infrastructure and services, end quote. North Broadway plan does not include describe or include any specific projects. Therefore, the LIFT authority and the council cannot estimate any impacts, and the council cannot make any findings based on a non-existent project. One of the things in the presentation that was made saying that Arapahoe County is aware of impact reports and there are several urban renewal authorities within Arapahoe County. That is true. To my knowledge, all of the county impact reports we received relate to a project, and in this case, there isn't one. Third, the county is concerned about the City Council's proposed declaration of the area to be blighted. In its present condition, the North Broadway area does not substantially impair or arrest the sound growth of Littleton, nor does it constitute an economic or social liability. Importantly, there is no evidence that these properties are a menace to the public health, safety, morals, or welfare of Littleton. The county urges Littleton and the City Council to review the request for a blight designation. Fourth, Littleton proposes utilizing 100% of the county's ad valorem property tax increment for the North Broadway plan. In general, the county would be more inclined to support similar plans if the city agreed that the county's allocation percentage of property tax increment revenues shall not exceed Littleton's allocation percentage of municipal sales tax increment revenues. And finally, the comment was made that the plan is not to include eminent domain. The plan includes provisions for eminent domain. If the council is serious about this statement, then that should be removed from the plan. The county wants to thank you for the opportunity for me to be able to speak with regard to the North Broadway plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. That now completes the roster. Carol?
Carol Brazak, I live in the 4th District. The roster disappeared before I got up there. I'm not going to repeat some of what I was going to say. Mr. Christofferson covered the points beautifully. I was glad he was here. Somebody's mentioned the fact that the boundaries are supposed to be narrowly drawn, and of course these are not because there's no project identified. So how can you narrowly draw? Carmex was included, but I'm wondering why King Soopers was not, or excuse me, Carmex was excluded. Why King Soopers was not excluded? A comment was made that the churches have been excluded, but that's only if you're a church on your own piece of property. If you're a church in a retail center, you are not excluded. Certainly different treatment. I think this does bear worth repeating. That one of the issues that concerns me is the last 2 plans that were brought before you were not the same plans that the LIFT board and the planning board had approved. They had been changed, and one was substantially changed. Citizens now have to compare one document with another because we know it is possible that they could be changed without approval of the LIFT board or without any notification to anyone of the change, and that includes this council. The last 2 plans you approved were changed sometime between the planning board's approval and November 4th. Council and the public was not notified of the change. The date of the document remained the same, September 18th, and there was no mention of the change. We don't even know if the LIFT board knows that the documents were changed. Hardly a way to do business that garners the citizens' trust. But we don't have to be concerned about any changes to the documents before you tonight. We can't even make a comparison to be certain because the documents before you tonight were not even written when they were approved. That's worth repeating. LIFT actually voted to approve the 2 plans before you tonight prior to them being written. It was an astounding event and done because we're running out of time. Really? I guess we are masters to the calendar and can no longer wait for documents to be written prior to their approval. Certainly is a great way to limit public input. But anyone who believes that the process is open and transparent is sorely mistaken.
Thank you, Carol. That concludes the public hearing, closing at 7:59 p.m. Applicant, would you, Jim, or?
Starting to collapse here. As far as making comments for each specific item that was brought up, I'm not going to go through that. There are a couple ones that I did want to address, and particularly the last one that was brought up here about the lift board approving the plans prior to seeing them. Again, the statute's quite clear. The lift board can adopt a plan. They do not approve the plan. Only council can approve an urban renewal plan. So there was no action taking approving the plans as being talked about. It's completely your choice. And I'm not going to go into all the details that the county brought up as far as not addressing the statute, other than the impact reports are all the same. These are the same type of impact reports that are generated for numerous projects, all in the metro area. In Colorado Springs, I've had the same experience with that. I've never had an objection for this from a county commissioners before at all. They simply recognize the fact that as a project develops, there will be impacts, and those will be addressed as on a project-by-project basis. So I think the county's assertions are unfounded at this point. We will address those at a later date. And really, that's the only comments I have to make on that. Again, I think we've heard a lot of these before, and they've been addressed.
Okay. Questions from council? Jerry?
Yes. Was the plan that the planning board reviewed different than the plan that you're presenting to us?
If we're talking about the North Broadway plan, no, the plans have not been changed.
So it's exactly the same as what they...
Right. I think what was being addressed was the Santa Fe corridor and the Columbine plans that are being alleged to have been changed.
So, but the plans we have tonight are the same that the
they
planning
are.
board. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Stallman?
Yeah, I guess I would be interested in hearing Mr. Hoffman address the helpful comments from the county, and I'm certainly glad they're stepping up to the plate and being good partners in terms of our efforts for economic development. But maybe he could address some of those issues.
Correct, sure.
Good evening, members of council. Corey Hoffman, General Counsel for LIFT. In a very general sense, this is a framework plan. The definition of a plan does reference a project, and I think we talked about this a little bit with the previous plans. A project is defined as undertakings and activities, plural. And so much of the concern of the county is I think, an incident of how this plan is drafted. We believe strongly that through the arbitration process, if the county chooses to proceed in that manner, that this impact report is in accord with the statute based on the nature of the plan as it's presented to you. The county has already submitted the request for arbitration related to the impact reports for the previous two plans. We're in the process of responding to that. Certainly, we have 20 days from the date they provided their objection on the previous plans. If they have the same objections on these two plans, we would anticipate going through the same process, and would anticipate that that is the arena in which we show conformance with the statute. But we strongly believe we are there today.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I don't know. I hope we certainly have the opportunity at some point to reciprocate in being able to partner with them on something that's important. Let's see here.
Was your tongue in your cheek on that?
Yes, absolutely was. Couple of, well, I guess how do you want to do this? We're just asking questions at this juncture? Or?
Questions for now or discussion?
How I guess maybe Jim or Corey again, just to see if we can, I don't know that we'll ever put any of this stuff to bed since it just keeps returning every time we have one of these meetings. But the idea of LIFT board approving the plan, they were advised at the meeting I attended on these plans, and Mr. Taylor's here as well, that, yeah, you could have the rest of the documentation provided, and it was commented that a lot of it was just essentially boilerplate similar to what had already been presented. My impression was that they looked at the plans and they approved them with eyes open in accordance with state statute. And again, as you indicated, they're not approved plans, they're recommended, and then it's up to us to make any requisite changes we feel are appropriate in accordance with, for example, folks coming down and asking to have properties excluded. Their recommendations would have been to include the properties that are now being requested to be excluded, 2 of which we did on the Santa Fe corridor plan, for example. So do you guys want to sort of reiterate that or make a comment?
I think you probably used very similar terminology to what I would. The LIFT board's role here is to make a recommendation. They felt comfortable that they had more than the gist, a plan in substantial conformity with the final version you had to be able to recommend approval. Having said that, their recommendation is something you could choose to follow or reject. Ultimately, it is this council's job to approve the plan, and no other body has that approval authority. The LIFT board's primary role, and I know I've mentioned this before, is to implement the plan. And when I say implement the plan, I would say implement the city council's plan. So their role is to implement your plan.
So to the extent that council has definitively passed a resolution that says we will not utilize condemnation powers and it's in the approved plan, and LIFT is charged with executing the plan that council has approved, does LIFT have any legal standing to utilize condemnation powers if council has not put them in the plan?
Absolutely not, for 2 reasons. Number one, because of what you just stated, but number 2, there is an entire process, an additional process under the eminent domain or under the Urban Renewal Act for making specific findings, having an additional public hearing in front of the city council to authorize the use of eminent domain. So it cannot act independently whatsoever.
Okay, and then hypothetically, if some council in the future said, oh yeah, we want to use condemnation, would that then constitute a material change to the plan that would have to go through the public hearing process all over again?
The current plan authorizes city council to approve the use of eminent domain. So technically, no, it would not require substantial modification to the plan, but it would require a separate public hearing process for the use of eminent domain. And I guess that the hypothetical I would give, that there's a couple. Sometimes there are, the term is friendly condemnation, but I think that's a misnomer because I certainly I think it's an oxymoron, but a voluntary condemnation. Sometimes there are reasons that property owners would ask that power be utilized. That's something certainly the city council could utilize at a later date. There might be strips, and I'm dealing with a case in another jurisdiction right now where there is a 5-foot strip of property owned by an entity that dissolved in 1978. It's 775 square feet, and the city council in that instance indicated that's exactly what eminent domain in the urban renewal context is for, where you've got this strip of property that essentially nobody owns. So I wouldn't want to say definitively under your existing rules it could never happen, because it could, but there is a significant amount of process before that could ever happen under the plan as it exists today.
Okay, thank you very much.
Council, additional questions? Yes.
I have a question for Corey. Hi, help me a little bit. There's this circular thought going project, plan, project. Can't have a plan without a project. Can't have a project without a plan. And I can't believe with as many jurisdictions throughout Colorado that are using eminent domain that we're not trying to recreate the wheel here. Why has this become so confusing in this room when it seems that there's other jurisdictions that have worked their way through, even to the point where counties didn't have some entrance into that circular logic?
Truthfully, Mr. Beckman, I'm baffled by that question as well. I don't think it's circular. I think that the definitions are clear. I think the county is objecting on bases that, at least in my experience, I've not seen before. That's not to suggest they're wrong. We'll ultimately have to decide that. But this plan is similar, in my experience, to plans in multiple other jurisdictions that have not had similar objections.
Thank you.
Council, if no additional discussion, looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion. Motion to approve the resolution approving a new urban renewal plan known as the North Broadway Urban Renewal Plan, subject to revision of Section 6.12 as attached, to remove the creation of individual tax increment areas within the urban renewal area and to instead authorize the use of both property and sales tax increment financing for the entire urban renewal area.
Second.
Okay, Council, we have a motion and a second. Additional discussion or comments?
Go ahead. Jerry did.
Yeah, I do have a question for our attorney. So on the resolution that we had, I don't remember the verbiage that we have in there, that we said that our taxing partners, we would get their agreement. Now, in this case, where Arapahoe is not, do we need to change that resolution?
Councilmember Valdez, I would echo the city manager's comments earlier. Some have argued that it's circular language or that we're changing the intent, but the very clear, unambiguous language of Resolution 88 says that no project, individual urban renewal project, would go forward without the approval of all of the taxing entities. What you have before you tonight is the overall plan, and as Michael has mentioned on prior occasions, we don't have a specific development project in the plan area at this time. So there is, in our opinion, absolutely no inconsistency with Resolution 88 approving an urban renewal plan that another taxing jurisdiction opposes. The issue is when a project comes forward. If the project comes forward tomorrow, the day after you approve the plan, if the council approves it tonight, at that point, we would sit down with the other jurisdictions and we would not go forward with that project consistent with council's direction in the resolution unless we came to agreement with all of those jurisdictions. Does that clear it up a little bit?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Stallman.
Nobody likes a recitation of state statute more than me. However, I thought maybe we'd try.
Can you read it fast?
Oh, no, I'm not even going to read it.
Okay.
How about that?
I'll take that.
Since we've done that previously, and since frankly don't see a lot of value in plowing the same ground yet again that we've covered for the last number of meetings on these topics, I thought I'd try something different. I have the privilege for the last couple of months. A couple of months ago, I got invited to sit on the board of a 501c3 organization that has a property down in Denver near Alameda and Broadway that ultimately their mission is to provide housing for folks with developmental disabilities and low-income folks. And they've got a parcel that's in dire need of redevelopment, and it's near the Denver Design Center, and it's got some upsides. So the board is looking at ideas to redevelop this site, and one of the ways to do that is to go out and kick the tires on projects that have already been done from in this case, from a potential low-income housing or developmental disabilities kind of housing project. And as it would so happen, I was out this morning talking to some folks that have done a couple of these projects, and one of the projects that they showed me was interesting in that it was not wholly dissimilar from what I personally would like to see us do as a project under the auspices of the plans we're talking about tonight. And I guess I wanted to show you guys that because we've been extraordinarily esoteric in this concept in terms of there's these parcels and there's blight characteristics in the neighborhood or in the area that may or may not apply to a given parcel, and on and on and on. So if you'll indulge me for just a couple of minutes, Doug, if I can get the screen on down there, that'd be terrific.
Oh, the screen.
You're going to have to probably, why don't you go ahead and widen it out there a little bit, or is that as far as it goes? Okay. So it's a little bit hard to see up there. It's a little dark, but this particular project is located in Wheat Ridge. It's called Wheat Ridge Town Center North. The area generally, you want to give me 4 minutes? That's good. You want to hit the button? We might as well, quid pro quo here, right?
Got
it. The area is Wadsworth north to about 44th. This is one block to the east of 44th and Wadsworth. And if you're familiar with Wadsworth, it's not wholly dissimilar from the Broadway corridor on the north side. What the Urban Renewal Authority the city put this area into an Urban Renewal Authority, don't know the name of it, Wheat Ridge Urban Renewal. And what they did was they identified this particular parcel in back of the main drag on Wadsworth as being blighted, and they worked with a group, in this case it's called Wazi Partners, to come in and build I believe it's 40 some odd unit senior residential housing. And it's actually a 9% HUD low-income housing tax credit property, which, Jerry, I know you know what that means, but it basically is in partnership with HUD. So I toured this thing, and it is absolutely amazing. It's got terrific amenities. It's got a social environment for seniors. The average age of the residents is probably 75 years old. It was built in 2012. What the Urban Renewal Authority did was invested about $2.5 million in street, curb gutter, drainage, the infrastructure, the public infrastructure that then allowed the developers to come in and do the rest of the construction project, which was roughly $12.5 million at the time. That works out to about little over 17% of the project was urban renewal money on a project that is absolutely fabulous from the standpoint of having seniors that live in that community stay in the community, which is where they want to stay. We've heard this over and over again, that if we can figure out a way to get senior housing into Littleton, that seniors want to stay in Littleton, and we want them to stay in Littleton. And oh, by the way, the demographics, when we've looked at those from the state demographer of Wheat Ridge, are very similar to what we have. This is a project that hypothetically could fit well in one of our core commercial corridors. And it would be a terrific type of project to have in this community. And it can be done potentially without urban renewal. But on the other hand, if you've got infrastructure requirements that make the project economics dodgy, you don't necessarily get these types of projects without a little bit of public-private partnering. That's what this is all about. It's about ongoing community. It's about economic development. It's about sharing community resources, using all the resources that are available, private capital, federal dollars, for example, HUD, where the opportunity presents itself, urban renewal, tax sharebacks, whatever, in order, in this case, to keep seniors in the community, which I think is an absolutely fabulous type of project and would love to see us do. So this is why I think the types of plans we're approving tonight and did approve 2 weeks ago are absolutely the right thing to do for the community. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce. Council, any others?
Yes. That is a beautiful project, and that's the first time we've heard mention of a senior property project within this urban renewal area. And I, for one, have been involved with dozens and dozens of properties just like that are tax credit, 4%, 9%, whichever. Not a single one of them have had urban renewal involved.
Okay.
But they have had, other government help, certainly the HUD, that kind of good stuff. Yeah. But none of them were in urban renewal. I guess my first question, we have an election coming up on March 3rd. I'm a little hesitant to want to do this right now. I'd rather wait till the citizens have spoken. If the citizens approve us, in a sense, going forward with urban renewal, I think it's full speed ahead. But right now, I think we're trying to jump the gun ahead of that vote. So regardless of what the citizens and the outcome might be, because if it comes back and they're all in support of urban renewal, I think that's a good thing. But if they come back and they say, no, not they do want to have more of a voice in this thing, then we're essentially taking that away. So I would prefer, I don't know what the rush is, why we can't wait until that vote occurs. And the affordable housing thing, I think that's great. I think especially on the senior part, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is such a need that it is definitely deserves another discussion, another day, because that's good stuff, and that's a beautiful project that you brought down. And I get realtor information. I'm a broker. I'm involved with development and stuff. Development is happening all across this country, with and without urban renewal right now. I think Mr. Bingham, he brought down some of the properties, and some of them which we did give some tax share type things, like the King Supers, Breckenridge for 2. But development's happening in the city. It's happening all across the country, like I said, without urban renewal. So I just don't think that we need to be in such a hurry to get this done. I really feel like we're being rushed into this. We did, the other 2, we did such a mass amount of properties that we've done. We're doing, again, this one and the one we're going to discuss here in a little bit, we're doing quite a bit of property here without a plan. We're just, right now, we're just having hope and a prayer, so to say. Arapahoe County, regardless of what other counties have done or that we're told, their position is the ones that they've had in the past have all had a plan, and they're uncomfortable not having a plan. I don't see any reason that we can't scale this thing back, make it a lot smaller, specific properties, like the one you shared. I think that's great. It was at 4 acres, 5 acres, something probably around that line, so. Thereabouts.
Yeah,
for
for
40 units, you need at least probably 2-3 acres. So we could do that on Broadway, and whether it's urban renewal or not, we could certainly get folks involved. Have we gone out and have we advertised to developers? Hey, we have some property. We'd love to see it developed. Instead, we're putting it out just as blanket thing. I would rather see the city, because they have very capable staff, of advertising that we have a strip of property, corridor, that can be developed at various pieces. Come one, come all. Take a look at it and see what you think. I don't believe we've done that. And instead, we're just bringing we're calling it a plan, but yet it doesn't have any detail to it. So I once again will be opposed to this plan.
Okay. Council, other comments? I'll make some from my perspective. One is I actually buy into the framework plan approach. I've talked with folks in a lot of other jurisdictions, some in Colorado, some outside of Colorado, that have looked at urban renewal and have started with a framework plan. And what part of this does is it engenders some of that response that I think, Jerry, you're looking for, which is to get folks to the point of saying, hey, we have a tool chest, we want to work with you on this. And it ends up enhancing some of those discussions and possibly bringing in, I'll call it, better projects on that. We are charged to direct and manage change in the city. It's within some of our purview on this. My hope is that the attorneys, through whatever process, can expedite the differences that they may have with the county in what we're doing. But believe that we're looking at some pretty great things. And not every project that we have is going to necessarily end up in the TIF financing. And at least with regard, some of this, what we've done is we've established some boundaries. And it allows us to look at going forward within the state statutes and move forward in that. And I trust our attorneys are doing their job. I'm not in a position, I don't have a JD, so I'm not second guessing our attorneys on some of that. So, but I think that it's a good thing to do.
So this is really hard. I mean, it is very hard. And I really appreciate what Jerry said about the smaller pieces and projects. And as much as I respect our attorney's views, I have read those statutes, I think, 6 times now, totally. And every time, even before this first came to us for discussion, I could not hear it any other way than the way the county is reading it in terms of projects rather than this sweeping thing. So I just cannot support this.
Okay. Council, we're done with discussion. Ready to vote? The motion is, as stated in our package, a motion to approve the resolution approving the new urban renewal plan, known as the North Broadway Plan, with additional comments there. So if anyone needs it more fully read at this point in time, let me know. Seeing none, council's ready to vote.
The vote is 5 in favor, with council members Cole and Valdez voting no. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you, council. And for those needing a biological interruption, let's take a 7-minute break and get back together at 8:32. In the interest of time and respecting time of everyone that's present, the next resolution is 143-2014. If you have very similar comments or even identical comments to make, as have been made, if you could refer back to those and not necessarily have to make those comments over again, unless council is looking for that repetition. Seeing none, please, if you could proceed on that. This is Resolution 143-2014. It's a resolution approving a new urban renewal plan known as the Littleton Boulevard Urban Renewal Plan. Applicant, Executive Director for LIFT, Jim Reese.
Good evening again, Council. Jim Reese, Executive Director, LIFT. Respecting what the mayor just mentioned, I will not go over all the same points I made before regarding the council goals and the use of urban renewal as a tool. I think you already heard enough of that. I do want to reiterate, though, that the purpose of our presentation tonight is to provide you with the tools and the evidence to show you that the area does qualify under the state statute for an urban renewal area. And that means that the conditions of blight are present, And again, Mr. Ricker will go through all that and talk about the various conditions that haven't met the number well in excess of the 4 that are required. And so we will go through that. The field investigation work, the public presentations, exactly this plan was done at exactly the same time as the North Broadway plan was done. So the dates are the same. Again, to assure you that there was a field investigation work done, the area was narrowed down through the public input process and also through the lift board's direction. Same criteria as last time regarding the properties that were removed. And again, the board again made a recommendation, passing a resolution recommending to City Council to adopt the Littleton Boulevard Urban Renewal Plan. So that's the process we followed through. Again, it went to Planning Board on the 10th of November, and on the 24th of November, it was approved as being in conformance with the comprehensive plan. We've had those agreements, as mentioned before, with the other taxing entities regarding the future tax increments and how they affect property taxes for both Littleton Public Schools and South Suburban. Again, no agricultural land involved in this one, so we don't have that issue to address. And again, I believe we have a motion before you that will revise that one section as was done in the previous plan as well. I did want to address a couple of points that I know are probably going to come up later, and that is I think you will have before you tonight several requests for properties to be removed. And the lift board did hear, I believe, just one request earlier and had a letter requesting that property be removed. And the board did turn that down. That was the Crown Trophy property. And the board did not agree with that and wanted it included. And I guess the point that the board made, and I guess I'd like to reiterate with that, is really what is the downside of including a property in an urban renewal area? There's the threat of eminent domain, as we've talked about, is not there. Property owners are free to make their own choices as far as whether or not they want to redevelop their property or not, or work with a potential developer or not. The upside, of course, is it's a great marketing tool. Having that available and out there, talked about earlier, advertising areas for redevelopment, having this tool in place is a great way to attract redevelopment in an area. So I think there's an upside there. The other thing is all these properties will benefit, whether they're in or they're out, from urban renewal and tax increment dollars, in the fact that especially on Littleton Boulevard, where I think there's great potential for new streetscape projects, as Mr. Stallman mentioned in that project before that. There's a lot of public works, things that could be done and be required for redevelopment areas. All these properties are going to benefit from that, whether directly or indirectly. So I guess that's the point I wanted to make before we get into project or property by property analysis here.
Okay. Any questions at this point in time from council? Seeing none, you want to bring
Okay,
Ms.
I'm
Ricker
going to turn it over to Ms. Ricker.
Is that an Oriole on your shirt?
Is that?
The bird?
Yes.
Okay. It had my attention.
Thought I'd keep things interesting tonight. Oh.
Oriole, like Baltimore Oriole.
Oh. Kind of lost my mouse here. Escape. Oh, there it is. Not showing up on here.
Bad TV, Ann.
Okay. There we go. Did you see it? Yeah, so just exit there. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to get into it.
Yeah, no,
thank
you
you
don't
very
go.
much.
You do not go. I'm not.
There we go. Mayor and Council, Thank you. This is the proposed Littleton Boulevard Urban Renewal Plan. Let me get going here. As you can see, this is the extent of the proposed area. Again, the yellow parcels are those that are being proposed to stay in the area. The tan parcels are those that were surveyed, as well as the yellow parcels, but were pulled out for the reasons stated earlier by Mr. Reese. The corridor is essentially Windermere to Bannock, and parcels that front the northern and southern portions of Littleton Boulevard, obviously on the south, closer to Windermere. The purpose of the plan, as we've said previously, is statutory requirement to reduce and eliminate the spread of blight and to advance the goals and objectives in your community plans, your comprehensive plan. Objectives, similarly, to alleviate those conditions of blight and to promote investment and reinvestment. And again, this is another one of those commercial corridors you identified in your comprehensive plan. Again, we went to, at least tried to go to great lengths to reinforce the idea this would not be a regulating document. It is not. It's not statutorily allowed to be, but that it would be a financing mechanism that would supplement those existing policy documents, codes, standards, regulations. Again, the general objectives remain the same, that the intent is to encourage investment and reinvestment by private property owners and to use the resources that may come from that investment to invest in the public realm in items of public benefit. Again, the development and design objectives, again, speak to putting vacant and underutilized property into productive use. The pedestrian realm, this was even actually more important if you think about Littleton Boulevard and the connections to the neighborhoods than even the opportunities afforded along Broadway. And again, encouraging growth and stability in local businesses. This is probably the most relevant where this might apply. And then finally, in terms of this plan being in conformance with the currently adopted comprehensive plan, and again, any site-specific plans that might come following adoption of this plan, should you decide to do that. Again, we have several references. I'll just click through them since you've heard them, but I will tell you the difference between Littleton Boulevard and Broadway. Littleton spoke to the neighborhood area specifically and wanting to encourage reinvestment in that area, so we cited that discussion. Within the Broadway area, there was some talk about local business growth, area business growth, and that. And so there was some customization there with those references. Again, you see in the economic plan the references to, again, putting property into productive use. Again, updating aging shopping centers. Again, the neighborhoods and infill and redevelopment. Again, authority activities remain the same in this plan. Investment in the public realm, encouragement of development consistent with standards and regulations that are in place, and judicious or appropriate use of resources that might become available through investment and reinvestment by the private sector. Again, the implementation of the plan, talk about multiple ways it could be spent, and again, we want to reiterate that by stating those here, it's really to be intended to be informative for the readers of the plan, but in no way obligate the LIFT authority. And as we say in the plans, that it has to be any item where incremental dollars would be spent would have to be identified as a priority. And I can tell you in my experience, it wouldn't just be at a priority, it would relate specifically to the private investment. So the idea is that you're trying to leverage public and private investment. Again, the powers remain the same in terms of environmental remediation, property acquisition, and then disposition to private sector for development, construction and reconstruction, eliminating unsafe conditions, and intergovernmental and redevelopment agreements. We talked about the review process again, the fact that modifications can be proposed in one form or another, expanding the area or whatever it might be, but that stakeholders can bring those forward, City Council can bring those forward, LIFT can bring those forward. And that's it. I'll just tell you, there were 10 of the 11 factors found within the Broadway area. And again, we did the same thing with all of the plan areas where we prepared an impact report for all of the various taxing entities. So.
One quick clarification. Thanks. One gentleman had come up earlier, and can you clarify again? A finding of blight has to do with conditions in the broad area, not on any specific parcel.
Yeah, and thank you, because that was unfortunate that there was any misunderstanding. And you say it all along in the process, but if you miss a meeting, and maybe we didn't reiterate it. So I think this is super important. There's 11 factors of blight identified in the urban renewal statute, and many, many, many of them deal with the public realm. So if sidewalks are not wide enough to accommodate ADA requirements or whatever the city's codes might be, but it's really safe movement. If the lighting's not right, if the infrastructure, for instance, if you go south on Broadway in the Rafferty area, but also in the Littleton Boulevard area where the waterway has come over from Broadway, where it's underneath the road. There are floodplain issues there. There are significant drainage issues. And all of that's within the public realm that private property owners are impacted by, but it's through no fault of their own. The factors that apply specifically to properties might be, they're really, it's kind of quite extraordinary when we include like factor A, which is a blighting structure. And that's usually when, there's boards on the windows and it's kind of, it's probably unsafe for habitability. So just a building that has gotten older, that continues to need regular upkeep, that would not fall within that A. Overhead utilities. And so what happens is, because we're looking at the environment, we're looking at it from the private property owner's perspective, and we're saying, what are these conditions that might be impacting the value of their property, their ability to lease or market their property, to redevelop their property? That's what we're looking for to identify, because those are the things, obviously, that are in the public realm that TIF dollars could be spent on. So we're really looking and saying, what's a negative impact? Sometimes we'll have such a high frequency of traffic accidents at a corner. Well, you'd say, well, that's not the fault of the property owners. Well, of course not. But if you own a business at that corner, and I've seen this happen all the time, and there's such a frequency that the police are coming out and it's accident prone, people start to avoid that area. Well, if you have a retail business, all of a sudden you've lost traffic. You've lost passerby traffic because of those physical conditions. That's a negative impact on you. We want to shine a light on that so that public dollars get spent to fix that, to improve the environment for the private property owners, for the private businesses. So we have to attach the condition to the properties that are surrounding it, because they're the ones that are impacted by it. But it's not an indictment of them. If we don't do it, how will LIFT, how will the city know where the dollars need to be spent unless you say, this is the condition, this is the impact it's having? And that's the purpose of the conditions survey.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the public hearing. Again, comments are limited to 4 minutes. If you've already made comments and need not make them again, at least council's, our memory is at least several hours old on this. First up will be John Movius. Let me just mention, there are 13 on the list. We'll give an opportunity for Mr. Myers if he wants to comment or not comment again, since his is actually in the Littleton Boulevard area. And we moved Kurt Melstrom to this list. And so John, and then on deck is Randy Hancock.
Mr. Mayor, do you need to say the time?
Okay, and the time is 9:52. Excuse me, 8:52. I'm trying to move ahead. So go ahead, John.
My name is John Movius. Good evening, Council. In light of the fact that I have 4 minutes, I think I took like 12 and a half minutes at Lyft, so I think I've got to probably end up reading the letter that I've placed in front of you, or actually had placed in front of you today. I'm here to respectfully request two things. The first is to consider eliminating my property from the blighted designation maps. That's 1099 West Littleton Boulevard. I have been, I'm just going to read this. This is probably going to be the best. I've owned Crown Trophy here in Littleton for the last 19 years, and I've been located in the Woodlawn Shopping Center until this last September. I purchased the Bryant Tire Building in September 2013, was able to fully move my operations into it recently with the hopes that I had finally found a permanent location to set down roots. I have a daughter, age 32, who's home taking care of my grandkids, and a son, age 30, who is sitting here, who helped me run my business. And they will be the next generation to run my business. As can be seen by a quick drive-by, hopefully you guys have driven by and seen it, we have in short order changed what was arguably the ugliest building on Littleton Boulevard into a building that had been called industrial chic and the Littleton Independent. I think that's great. Ornamental iron's been added to the front and side facades, and additional windows have been added to enhance the curb appeal. There are plans on the drawing board to continue with exterior landscaping and additional facade upgrades, with our intent to make 1099 a focal point and a true representation of how private ownership can invest and better it both itself and the surrounding community. Our tax contributions have been significant over the last 19 years, and as a majority of our customers come from outside Littleton, they also contribute significantly through their purchases at Littleton retailers. We have been good corporate citizens and have come to be respected as providing the best in quality, price, and customer service. Now, I want to state up front that I am actually pro-urban renewal. But despite Mr. Reed's assurances that eminent domain will not occur, there is no legally enforceable mandate in the Urban Renewal Charter that requires them to take no for an answer from a private individual. Despite the best intentions of City Council, once the areas in Littleton are voted on as blighted, the Urban Renewal Authority has 30 years of absolute powers in pursuing its goal of renewing and energizing these blighted areas. In order for it to do what the job it is charged to do, it must have all-encompassing powers to remove any obstacle, and a reluctant owner being one of them. The broad brush that Lyft has used to designate the blight areas does three things. First, it maximizes potential properties for renewal projects. Second, it maximizes the amount of taxes that will be pulled from city coffers to pay for the bonds issued for those projects. And third, it discourages private investment in existing properties. In fact, all owners of any property in the blighted designation zones must disclose this fact to any potential buyer. The reason for the law is clear. Its purpose is to inform potential buyers that the property can be taken for any reason at any time. And except for speculators who will make money off buying the properties cheap and trying to get as much money as they can out of the city, all private expenditures will stop. There's no incentive to upgrade and make beautiful their existing properties when the very real possibility of eminent domain will take their properties from them. All these blighted properties will become stagnant in private investment, with the only renewal of these areas coming if and when an urban renewal project targets them. While intelligent and urban renewal is a major plus for any city, many urban renewal projects are not always the panacea that cities hope for and that accountants project. One only has to look at Trolley Square in Inglewood and our own riverfront to see that while a few people made a lot of money, our communities were the poorer for it. The best possible outcome for any city is an intelligent mix of viable urban renewal projects and private individual owner investment. And the broad brush that Lyft has used, I truly believe, will lead us to a poorer city government and a stagnation of those areas affected. The right mix of urban renewal projects and private investment will achieve the desired outcome in roughly half the time, with substantially less tax drain as well. I was told in no uncertain terms at the last Lyft board meeting that my property is so small, it is highly unlikely it would ever...
Thank you.
I knew it was going to be... So I respectfully request to be excluded from the blighted designation maps. My property is not blighted. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy Hancock And next up is Matt Bagnall.
Thank you very much. You know, actually, I've been on Littleton Boulevard for 20 years now, running my business, Randy's Auto Care. I'm sure you guys have seen it. And I've probably put in a sales tax each month. We run over hundreds of thousands of dollars over 20 years, the city sales tax. Now, right now, we're at a point where, and probably because of this, is the landlord finally decided to sell me the property. And my son is, after he walking down from Littleton Boulevard, has come and joined me in the business. But what is the value of the property going to be worth after it's blighted? If I do buy this property, what is my business going to be worth after it's blighted? I'm not a real estate agent. Jerry says he's in the real estate. What's the downturn of the value after this happens? I built this business for my son, for his future. Now I'm in question. What do I do? Do I leave Littleton? What do I do with the business? Do I buy the property? Eminent domain, I've heard enough of it that it worries me in the property. And I mean, is the property worth 5% lower, 10% lower? The business worth 5, 10, 20% lower? These are questions I don't know. And now I never heard anything. The first thing I heard about this was on my door Sunday morning of, oh, there's a city council meeting and the property's going to be blighted. Really? So I'm here now. I'm probably a little too late. I would request that 1059 West Littleton Boulevard be taken off the blighted zone list. And I do agree with the improvements on Littleton Boulevard. As a business owner, I'm really pro, because I do see an advantage also to my business if the environment is a little better down the road. So good luck, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Randy Bagnall, and after that, John Hogan.
Hi, Matt Bagnall. And I'm sort of here representing two kinds of parties, one the small businessman and the other the property owner. So my parents own a property on Littleton Boulevard, 14,000 square feet with 10 different businesses in it, small businesses, all of them successful. All of them have been there for many years. Some new businesses even opening in there in the next month or so. We're going to have a restaurant in there. Property pays $30,000 a year in property taxes. So, you know, it's a productive, good building. We spent $12,000 in the last year repainting the exterior, having the parking lot redone, removing all sorts of trees and cleaning it up and things like that. And you know, in my opinion, what you're doing here with this quote plan, which I think is a silly word for this, is you're destroying our property value by calling it blighted and making it difficult if my parents ever wanted to market this property to get what the property's worth. Okay? I've been an IT project manager for 20 years, and I can tell you we'd never use the word plan for something with this lack of detail. It's really hard to believe that you're going to call this a plan when there isn't a single project in it. I find that hard to believe, and I find it hard to believe that you'd move forward with a quote plan that's going to destroy property values for those people that are called blighted. Okay, my parents have owned this property for many years. I help them manage it. Our tenants take pride in their business. We take pride in the property. And for you to go forward and say that this is a plan, I think it's silly. Within the building, I said we have 10 businesses, all sorts of different small businesses that benefit the city, a mixture of services and retail. There's over 30 people working in there at all times, all of them, contributing to the tax base. I talked about thousands of dollars that we spent in fixing up the building. The other part about it is, again, coming from the perspective of a project manager, I work for a large corporation. that, you know, spends millions of dollars every year on projects. Next year, they're going to spend $500 million. Even the smallest project doesn't get funding without a plan. The smallest project doesn't get funding without payoff, without benefit, okay? And there isn't any known payoff here. There isn't even a single project in the plan. And beyond that, you know, from the small business owner's perspective, one of our tenants is here actually, and my brother owns a small business. You know, people in that kind of situation, they don't tend to move forward with investing in their business without certainty. And you're going to vote on a plan that has no certainty. There's no projects within the plan, and you're going to ruin the property value of many property owners and really the value of these businesses without a solid plan. And so I would be opposed to it, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Can I ask a question?
No. This is public
Well,
comment.
I wanted to clarify, was he asking to have his removed or speaking just against the plan? Just okay.
To have it removed, but I'll have my parents write a letter to the city to have it removed.
Okay.
It's not my property, so
John Hogan, and then Paul Bingham.
Good evening, Council. I'm the small business that Matt was talking about. I was pleasantly surprised to see him here, but thanks for giving me a chance to talk to you tonight. One of the big things that I think may be an issue with this, and I've heard it repeated several times, is communication. I mean, I found out about it. I heard something small about it in the Littleton newspaper. I had, again, a piece of paper on my door, and I had heard somewhere that, you know, business owners were supposed to be notified. And there was no notification. I think one of the downfalls that has people stirred up, however this turns out, is the fact that they're not hearing about it. You know, just honestly, if I have my A-frame sign a little too close to the street, I get a letter in 2 days. But we heard absolutely nothing about this. And the other thing I think Matt covered quite well is when you have no way of knowing down the road exactly what's going to happen, you do tend to kind of question, well, do I plan on trying to build a bigger business? I've been in his shopping center now for about 8 years. And when I heard about this, because there are so many ifs, ands, buts, which I got more of a legal education tonight about what this whole thing's about than I ever gambled on, but it just makes you a little bit leery of planning a long-term investment and staying in Littleton. So I guess the biggest thing that I think you guys could get more feedback is if you did find a way to make it more publicly known. I know all the businesses in the center that I'm in, you know, I talked to a couple of them today, and nobody's heard a thing about it. So I would think that every business in town, you know, you get the sales tax from us, you could send us all out a letter trying to make sure we knew exactly what was going on and keep us informed as it moves along. And that's pretty much it. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about it.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.
Next is Paul Bingham.
Would you like to hear my pitch again with my pictures?
Not if you're going to say the same. I said not if you're going to say the same. You could just say ditto.
You can do it. You can do it. We listened to Bruce Dahlman read state statute.
He didn't read the state statute. That was it.
In that same category.
Okay. Ann Coriano.
Good point.
And then on deck, Pam Chadbourne.
Good evening. Ann Coriano. We live at 6720 South Clarkson Street in Centennial, Colorado. My husband and I own a building at 5699 South Greenwood Street and operate a plumbing and heating service company from that building, which is currently on your blighted and urban renewal plan. We bought that building in the early 1980s and have serviced hundreds of families within the city of Littleton, including one of the current council members. We are there every day. We receive mail there every day. We receive no notice of blight. My husband and my sons have worked very hard to establish a very good reputation as being honest, fair, and trustworthy plumbers, in primarily service work in homes and small businesses in Littleton, Centennial, and the South Metro area. Our building is in the process of some renovations, new roof, gutters, soffits, new doors, but it was never a showroom where people could come in and view high-end plumbing fixtures, sinks, or fancy faucets. It is a warehouse building that stores most of the supplies or parts that we need in order to fix whatever may be broken or in need of replacing. The servicemen come to the shop, pick up the parts, and move to the next job. The only people that come to the shop are employees, delivery people, and supply house salesmen. We have customers that have used our company for over 25 years, and we have a good reputation for referrals for other businesses and tradespeople that also have businesses along this corridor that you have designated blighted. We are actually across the street from Crown Trophy and Randy's Tires. We believe that the City Council needs to listen to the voting citizens of Littleton and the taxing entities who oppose this urban renewal plan and not eliminate small business for the sake of high-rise apartments or big box businesses. We have brought copies of a letter for each of the council members indicating that we wish to be excluded from your urban renewal plan, as we do not need assistance from urban renewal to upgrade and improve our so-called blighted building. If you would allow me to pass them.
Give it to the city clerk, please. Thank you, Ann. Next up, Pam Chadbourne, and on deck, Linda Newfink.
Absolutely.
Well, again, I'm Pam Chadbourne, District 1, and as always, when citizens come out to speak to you, I am so impressed by the sheer power of their observations. They actually said several of the things I've said much more eloquently and very convincingly, I thought, so I urge you to listen to the previous speakers. I wanted to make a couple comments about things said by LIFT representatives. One thing is that LIFT is claiming they can't figure out impacts until they have a project by project. It's based on the project, and the whole point of urban renewal is to do public improvements that the city cannot afford. It's not based on a project. It must be driven by things that the city can't afford otherwise, like sewers or major improvements, not sidewalks or streetlights. So no, it's not project by project, and you can't wait for projects to assess this. The city should have its independent goals about what urban renewal should return to the city. Great potential. Well, you've got to protect our potential before you pass this plan. So historic designation, Littleton used to do them manually up until 2009, and we haven't done any. Well, before you pass this plan, you really ought to look at this corridor and protect buildings there. Let them know, but more importantly, let developers and investment group speculators know. Unless the historic designation is in place before you pass this plan, these are all at risk, and all the other goals that were mentioned as well. It'd be nice to have affordable housing, and I think I mentioned to you in the CRS that there's a requirement that you be able to say before you pass a plan that you can relocate all of the residents and small businesses. There's more than 500 in this area, and you've got no provision in this plan to do that. There's no feasibility here, not even a mention. You cannot pass this, according to the CRS. I would not vote for it. And you've heard several business owners mention that they haven't been notified, and I can testify to that. I've seen the lists. I think property owners were notified, but there are many tenants in most of these commercial properties, and they haven't heard about it. You know, the city could have done that, and I think you should have, and I think you still should. Don't pass the plan, and do some remediative outreach to these business owners who've done so much for the city. And ironically, talking about the growth and stability of local business by urban renewal, we already have it. So the issue here is that developers are going to cherry pick the best, lowest cost, high profit sites from these huge areas. This will produce the opposite of the best outcomes for the city. Investors will avoid the most challenging sites, which is the ones that we need the money for. We'll get patchy, poor fit development along primary corridors, then we'll run out of money, and then the next couple decades will be painful for everybody. This is a horrible way to do this. And to mention how we do this matters. If you talk to people, it's good. If you don't, I don't trust Lyft, and you're giving them a huge amount of power if you pass this. So, again, I urge you to vote against the Littleton Boulevard plan, in this case because I think it's the heart and soul of Littleton.
Thank you, Pam. Okay, Linda Newfinke, and then Jeannie Erickson.
Okay, I just want to mention real quick that, again, Lyft adopted the plans before they were written, despite the fact that the attorney cautioned against it. And one of my questions is, how do you manage urban renewal for hundreds of properties without significant expenses? Littleton Boulevard was originally 169 properties, about 150 were included and 18 excluded. So between Littleton Boulevard and Broadway, it's 240 properties. That is quite a lot of properties. And Mr. Stallman, I have to kind of disagree with you because this number here does not include the significant number of units in residential housing, and it disproportionately affects seniors here in Littleton with the Bradley House and the Southview Place. And, you know, these guys haven't been noticed that they could potentially be kicked out of their homes. So with hundreds of properties designated as blighted, does Lyft have the resources to accomplish urban renewal? So let's move now to the properties. What about the properties? Lyft excluded single-family owner-occupied structures, property owned by the city, South Suburban, Doctors Care, Littleton Housing Authority, churches and facilities, and properties that have been recently remodeled, such as car dealers and Home Depot. So guess what? This plan still includes a church. Recently, the Broadway includes recently remodeled car dealerships and recently remodeled properties such as Doctors Care, Housing Authority properties, open space owned by the city, and properties owned by the city. So this is a spreadsheet that we had to develop with, has the Littleton property numbers that is on your map here, and then the AIN from the county came from the condition survey that Ricker Cunningham did. So we had to cross-reference this with the county, and also on the total right-hand side, you'll see the county use designation. So this is how they tax it based on the property. But what you'll notice in green is where people have actually, where the properties have actually been excluded. So if you look at number 13 and number 21 and 25 and 35, you can see that 13 has been excluded, but at the exact same building, we have 21, 25, and 35 included, which is shown by the red arrows. Now, the purple arrows, you'll see that the Chinese American Council of Colorado has 2 properties excluded, number 20 and 27, but yet one property on 31 has been included. So a lot of these things, I mean, there's a lot of issues here. Here's Littleton Housing Authority properties that have been excluded, but there's been 2 properties that are included. So no rhyme or reason. And then here's the Church of God Holiness, on property number 103 on your map. So these are only a few of the examples. There are many, many more examples. So what a mess, unless, of course, you like cleaning up messes. So I keep going back to the statement that says, we urge the City Council to review requests for blight designation more carefully. These haven't had any debate as to what should be included, excluded, what's reasonable, what's not reasonable. So thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Jeannie Erickson, and on deck, Teresa Tucker.
Thank you, Council. I just have something really short. Mr. Beckman, you had a question regarding the county, Arapahoe County, and their concerns. I have a little answer for you. I think the reason why Arapahoe County has concerns about all of these urban renewal areas is because they are losing too much money. They are being siphoned by other cities in Arapahoe County that are taking advantage of urban renewal. And last year alone, they lost $1.5 million due to it. Just thought I'd let you know.
Thank you. Teresa Tucker, and then Bruce, do you need to speak?
Could I add a comment, please?
Yes.
Hi, Teresa Tucker, 18 Bradbury Lane. I've lived in Littleton for 52 years. This city is very important to me, and I have taken a lot of interest in and action for the welfare of the community. I'm currently the owner of the office building at 799 West Littleton Boulevard. I've been the owner for approximately 15 years. Every property that we have owned or still own has been fixed up. New windows, paint, landscaping, and other efforts have been made to improve them. We are invested in keeping Littleton a vibrant, beautiful city. The property on Littleton Boulevard has been taken care of. Most recently, a new roof was put on. A few years ago, we put in new windows, and a few years before that, we did some landscaping improvements. We did all of this with our own money and our own drive. We did not need public money to do this and will not need any in the future. We also believe that the blight conditions that Lyft has used to blight our property are faulty. I took a drive today and looked at my property to see if I could figure out why Lyft and Ricker Cunningham believed it was an area of blight, and I don't believe these are accurate descriptions. There's a statute in the state law that says that you can take your designation of blight off your property. Why would it be provided if there was no downside? I am wary whenever anyone tells me that there is no downside to anything. I am a viable business, and I can take care of myself. I am requesting that the property at 799 West Littleton Boulevard be excluded from the Littleton Boulevard Urban Renewal District. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Bruce Myers, and then Kurt Melstrom.
Thanks again, Council, for giving me...
More comfortable this time?
What's that?
You more comfortable this time?
No, not really. I've met an awfully lot of nice, intelligent people, though, that have helped me through this. First, once more, I'd like to reiterate that 53 years at the same address and didn't get any notice about that, and I'm feeling just pulled from both sides. The word blight is like an arrow to your heart when you own property. We all remember what happened in Kelo, went to the Supreme Court. It's fearful that someone could come and say, sorry, we're taking it away, and then do nothing with it, when it was being a productive piece of property. It's also been explained to me that blight could be down the block, could be half a mile away, but because it's within a certain distance of my building, I'm blighted too. Could be just because I have Comcast cable running from a pole instead of underground, that makes me blighted. So I'd like to not amend my request for exclusion. I'd like to keep that in, as I said before. But I did want to thank everyone for their helpfulness in helping me understand this in the spur of the moment. Thanks. Have a great night.
Thank you, Bruce. Kurt? And then John.
I thought maybe I was going to be last, but apparently not. My name's Kurt Maelstrom. I own Pyramid Liquors at 599 West Littleton Boulevard. I've been there since 1972. During that time, my business has produced over $3 million in sales tax for the city of Littleton. I've done this all by myself without any help from the city or anybody else. And this whole thing, I'm kind of perplexed. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but shame on you guys and shame on Lyft for not including the small businesses in this proposition. Nobody consulted anybody. Somebody from Lyft should have contacted each business owner and said, here's what we want to do. What do you think about it? Nobody. The first thing I got was a postcard 2 weeks ago that said there was a meeting tonight. So as far as I'm concerned, you've all dropped the ball. And I really see a lot of arrogance here on both sides. You want to tell us what to do without even asking us what you're going to do or telling us what you're going to do. You say you have this property and you have this property. You don't have any properties. The property owners have these properties. They pay the property taxes, and they should have been included. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Kurt. John? That was Kurt Maelstrom.
Again, John Christopherson, Deputy County Attorney with Arapahoe County. I'd like just to make sure that the letter between Arapahoe County and Littleton is already in the record, and I just want to preserve for the record all the comments that I had with regard to the North Broadway Urban Renewal Authority are going to be the same as with regard to the Littleton Boulevard one as well. So just want to make sure that the record was set, that those will be reflected and included in this position as well. Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, John. Okay. That completes the roster.
Jerry wants to.
Jerry. Oh, yes. Jerry? Yes.
Start the call.
My name is Jerry Hill. I live at 5444 South Prince. If you'll hold up a minute. For your permission, council permission, I'd like to defer my time to the young man so he could finish his letter, and I'm kind of curious about what he has to say.
I'm sorry, Jerry, you can't do that.
Can we do that?
I said you can't. No.
Thank you. Cannot?
Cannot.
He hasn't spoken to himself, though. He could always come down to himself.
Carol?
I had about 30 seconds left on my time. I just do want to convey that the property owners at 1210 to 1228 Littleton Boulevard, which is Woodlawn Plaza, would like to have their property excluded.
Are you the property owner on that?
No, my dad is, but he couldn't come tonight. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Matt. Carol?
Carol Breezak, I live in the 4th District. A few comments. The change to 6.12 that is being, or I guess proposed, when we sat at the council or the LIFT board meeting where they approved the 2 urban renewal plans that had not been written, there was a question from LaDonna Jorgensen who asked, did we have sales tax increment in the plan? Because we don't want to have sales tax increment in the plan. And there was a little kind of tay-to-tay back and forth, and I was close enough sitting to her. I said, if we had a written plan, we could look it up and see. But the fact is, their intention was not to have sales tax included in these plans, but yet it's here. And that's what prompted a discussion with the attorneys. that if the sales tax was included, then they would have to go back and repeal the plan and start over again. So I'm really perplexed that we have, first of all, a plan that's before you that was never written or read by the Lift Board when they approved it, and then it has been changed since it wasn't written and presented to you tonight. It's a bizarre process. You do not have a plan because it does not have a project in it. And we keep talking about blight. And just because something meets the conditions of blight, the law says it has to be a menace to the public health, safety, morals, and welfare. Most of the things that are cited are things that can be taken care of through code enforcement. It might surprise you to know that I am in complete agreement with Ms. Ricker and Mr. Rees, who both made statements during the planning board that the type of document you are considering tonight are not urban renewal plans, but financing documents. I fully agree. If they say they're not plans and they don't meet the definition of a plan, then certainly they are correct. According to Lyft, my office is blighted. The conditions are it's unsanitary, it's unsafe, it has inadequate public improvements, hardly the property owner's fault, and it is unhealthy for me to work there. According to the law, my blighted building constitutes a serious and growing menace, injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and welfare of the city, and contributes substantially to the spread of disease and crime, and the list goes on. Do you really believe that I would go to work every day under such circumstances? The law was written to rehabilitate slums. And if Littleton Boulevard constitutes a slum in the eyes of Lyft and Council, then those of us in Littleton that pay taxes have bigger problems than what we're facing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Doug? Doug, just want to make sure this is germane to the Littleton Boulevard plan.
Yes, sir. Doug Clark, and I live in the same place I did before. How clever we are being tonight, but we're not being very open or honest. And those of you that are concerned about eminent domain, listen to what's happening right in front of your eyes. The council passed Resolution 88, which says, concerning the participation and support of impacted taxing entities in urban renewal areas. The resolution applies to the impacts that are happening to taxing entities. Impacts to the taxing entities comes from Lyft taking the tax dollars that would normally be collected by those taxing entities, which is tax increment financing. The impacts do not come from the creation of projects. You have passed for Santa Fe, and you have just passed for Broadway, and you are contemplating passing for Littleton Boulevard tax increment financing, which will take the taxes from the taxing entities for 25 years without the consent or approval of the taxing entities. Those impacts will happen regardless of whether any projects take place or not. The tax increment financing takes taxes from the taxing entities. That's the impact. The projects inject dollars into the urban renewal area. The impacts that come to taxing entities come from the tax increment financing. And yet, what you're now claiming is that your resolution doesn't apply. You don't need the agreement of the other taxing entities because you don't have projects. You may never have a project in any of the urban renewal areas and still collect the taxes for 25 years, which is what you have approved in your tax increment financing. And you have said yourself that Lyft will evaluate each and every project to determine whether there's gap financing. Well, there will be improvements in those areas over the 25-year project, over the 25-year span of the TIF, but there may not, those projects and that improvement may not be financed by Lyft. So the taxing entities will be impacted, but you're claiming that since you're only going to do it on a project-by-project basis now, that the resolution doesn't really apply. In other words, you have now creatively reinterpreted your resolution so it's completely meaningless by emphasizing that the resolution only applies to projects, but it doesn't actually apply to the impacts that happen to the taxing entities. So you're ignoring TIF and concentrating on projects and passing plans that impact the taxing entities. And this isn't impacts that are happening just for Arapahoe County. Arapahoe County isn't the only taxing entity that you're missing the approval from. You don't have approval from urban drainage and flood control, and Ann Rickard just got done telling you that there are multiple taxing entities along Littleton Boulevard, and you have no approval from any of those or support. So you have passed a resolution, and then after you passed it, when you run into perturbations, you have come back and said, well, the resolution doesn't really count because we really meant it to happen for projects, even while passing tax increment financing, which will impact the tax increment areas without their support and without their approval. The question is, did you ever really mean to honor the resolution?
Not seeing anyone else. Public hearing is now closed at 9:33. Applicant, Jim.
Good evening again. Jim Reese, Director of LIFT. Just a few comments addressing some of the comments that were just made. One overarching comment that I heard mentioned was the fact that a blight designation will reduce property values. I can't go in and tell you property by property that exactly what will happen, but I do know that in 8 urban renewal projects that I've been involved with in the Colorado Springs area, I just received, as of today, the property tax valuation for the whole area, and 6 out of 8 have gone up. 2 have stayed the same because no projects have occurred in the area. So I disagree with that assumption that property values are all going to go down. And Ann could probably elaborate more on some of the experience in the metro region. As far as the question or comments made about notification, postcards were sent out and all the addresses were checked against the public records. And so we did follow the statute as far as notification requirements. Some may have been missed, and I'm sorry about that, but we did follow the statute requirements. And again, back to the question about properties being removed. As I mentioned earlier, and not trying to sound flip, but I just don't see a downside of including the properties. And I think there's some problems if we don't include them. If in the future that the project does happen in that area and the property wants to be included in the area, then that would require a major modification of the urban renewal plan. We'd have to come back to council and request that. It's a little awkward to do that. It can be done, but again, I don't see the reason to do that at this point. Again, and if we do improvements, as Ann indicated before, those are supposed to be public improvements associated with projects or land within the area. Can you do improvements on properties not included in the area? It's a gray area. It really is, and would be subject to legal interpretation on whether we can do it or not. If the city required upgrades to utilities along the entire corridor, probably so. But it's something exactly right in front of another property, again, it's going to be a legal issue, I'm afraid of. And not all projects, especially in the Littleton corridor, are going to require TIF. And we've heard a lot of people talk about tonight about the fact they've done a lot of improvements and they didn't need the TIF. And that's great, and that's kind of the whole way this works. But there will be projects within the area that are going to need assistance. They're going to need that gap financing to make them work. And we want that tool to be available so that we can actually help those projects to get started.
Questions from council?
I'm happy to let someone else go if they want to go first.
Councilmember Beckman.
Hi, Jim. One of the discussions that we heard was that a TIF, a tax will be drawn from an area for 25 years, whether or not a project is ever put into that area. I'm not sure I understand that statement, because my belief would be, and I would like you to help me with that, my belief is that that's the difference in the value of the property is what creates the TIF, and if no project's put in there, why would there be an increase in the property, and how would you withdraw taxes from that area if that was the presumption? I don't get that at all.
I think you're right, spot on with that. In fact, the only increase in valuation that could occur would be from the natural growth in the area due to inflation and that type of thing, or general reassessment. And that is included in the base.
That's correct.
So basically the base will ratchet up over time. And so that those dollars continue to flow to all the taxing entities.
Because the financing document would there's no financing. There's no
But for the
added
project,
value.
there is no money. You're right.
Okay. A couple other questions. I've looked at the conditions that must be met in order for us to proceed with urban renewal, but I hear the reference to, and I don't have all the wording, but that it's basically a menace to public safety, health, welfare, morals, or whatever. And I'm wondering where that statement comes from and how that applies to the designation for urban renewal, which we've been basing on those 11 or 12
Okay, I'm going to let Ms. Ricker handle that one. And would you, or Corey? Okay, we're going to have our attorney handle that.
Okay, and then just before you go down, maybe then it'll be to the attorney, but tell me about the ability to remove a designation of blight from a property that was mentioned in the public hearing.
I don't know that you can remove the designation of blight, but you can remove the property from the plan area.
Okay, thank you.
Which in essence does the same thing. Address that first part of the question. The conditions of blight and...
Yeah. And again, just because there seems to be a confusion on that. We've been working with conditions of blight, but I'm hearing another standard be discussed in the public hearing that must be met. And it's an extremely high standard. I'm wondering where that comes from, if you could help me understand that.
Yeah, and I would encourage you to look at the resolutions that you're being asked to consider tonight. Those are the findings that you need to make under the urban renewal law. So if you look at each of those findings, those are precisely the findings. Those findings are legislative. So you get to make the findings based on the evidence you heard tonight if you think they meet those standards. And so you have the resolution in front of you. Look at each of those standards, and if you determine legislatively that those are the appropriate findings, then I would encourage you to approve the plans.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stallman.
Don't go away, Corey. Sorry. I want to be real crystal clear here. There is no collection of TIF if there are no urban renewal projects. Is that correct?
Correct. The increment is created based on the project. So to the extent that inflation, for example, creates value, that is not increment for purpose. And so one of the I think difficulties with urban renewal in general is this idea of what we talk about as the but-for test. And so when people talk about taking the property tax revenue of other governmental entities, that assumes that there was going to be property tax revenue in the absence of urban renewal.
Right.
And I think that's sort of the disconnect and as a matter of policy.
Right. Okay. Yeah, no. And the other thing I want to ask you here is, and again, I think it's not applicable to this area, but the example that is easy to digest is we're in an historically low interest rate environment. There's a lot of capital being spent on projects, and yet the Enser property down at Mineral and Santa Fe remains vacant because economically there are defects on that parcel having to do with drainage and utilities, so forth and so on, that make it uneconomic to develop. And the partnering of private and public entities to overcome those defects could result in a project that's beneficial for the entire community in theory.
That is absolutely, I think, an appropriate policy statement. I'm going to avoid the statement in this sense and say, look, I'm the lawyer.
I understand.
And I'm not, and so a lot of the economics of it are for people that have an expertise in that. But having said that, I think one of the fundamentals, if you will, of urban renewal, or a couple, is, number one, this idea of gap financing. There are projects that, for whatever reason, can't get done. Ultimately, there's a determination that there's a gap that, in concept, urban renewal can help with. Right. But certainly the folks that I've worked with have heard me caution that just because the tool is available doesn't mean it should be used. Right. And there is an analysis that has to be undertaken. Not every project is a good project. And I could certainly point to examples throughout the metro area where maybe there were projects that were done that shouldn't have been. And so I think that's the caution going forward, is this is something that's available, but not always utilized, not a necessity, right, but available.
Okay. The gentleman that came down mentioned the Kelo case, which I don't know, that was, I think, in the 80s, maybe 90s. But if I recall, it was in Connecticut, and it had something to do with municipality taking a property and giving it to a private developer, which was overturned by, I think, the Supreme Court.
Actually, the Supreme Court said that you can use, depending on the nature of your state constitution, can sometimes use eminent domain for economic development purposes. Now, Colorado reacted to the Kelo case and put provisions in Colorado statute that says you can't take property really absent urban renewal and the process in the urban renewal law. But for example, under the statute, the city of Littleton couldn't take private property and give to another. There's specific language in the state statute that would prevent that.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay. I think that's it. Thanks.
Other questions from council? Yes, Deb?
Ann? Earlier you spoke to blight, and I thought that you covered it very inclusively. But after you spoke, a number of property owners came down and have contrary thoughts and opinions to what you said. Can you help create that
I can try
understanding?
again. I found that just like your home, your business, it's very emotional. And, the thought of blight's such a horrible term. And so what they're inferring from this is that somehow we've said their property isn't being maintained, that it's unattractive, and that's not at all the fact. So all I can do is restate again that what the statute says is that you have to find 4 or some other, the highest threshold is 5 of the 11 factors found somewhere within the boundaries. So you can have properties that have no factors present, even within the public realm and impacting them, or you can have some that have 11. It's just what the statute says is they have to be found somewhere within the area. It also says that in line with that, you don't have to find factors on every single parcel. Okay. Again, they just have to be found within the boundary. So I understand the emotion, but every time somebody comes up and says, the blighting designation on my property, I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. That's not at all. There's nothing in the language that says there's a blighting designation. And the person who said you have to report that,
No. So what this is it's a designation of the area that says the threshold number were found somewhere within the area from street to street to street to street. And that's what's required. Now, we went to a higher level of really trying to make sure we documented everything we could get our hands on, which is something we always do. And we're provided a good deal of information. And, again, the example we've given at various information meetings, for instance, if you're building, you have a commercial building and it doesn't have sprinklers, fine. I mean, they know that they're covered, they're grandfathered in, even though the city adopted a building code, may have been adopted after, probably was. But the idea is that if they go to redevelop that property, they're also going to hit a threshold whereby the city will then come back and say, you increase to X number of square feet or height or, whatever it is, and I've gone through all the thresholds with your Public Works Department, and they hit that, and then their cost to redevelop can become exponential. And because most cities don't want to discourage reinvestment, this tool can be used to pay for those extraordinary expenses that otherwise would have made it infeasible for them to redevelop. And so in that instance, they want to be in. In that instance, they're like, now I can go for this funding source that can help me so I can redevelop. So it's great, and to these people's points, of all the plans I've worked on, many of the properties don't necessarily need access. But I can tell you of the ones that do, and to have that taken away, that possibility, and I'll tell you, it's 99% of the time, it's the small business owner who bumps up because, they're really working hard to make it work. And sometimes these expenses are extraordinary and they work in these environments and we want them in these environments. So we provide this funding mechanism to help them stay and help them improve if they want it. So again, I guess I'm with Mr. Rees. I don't understand why you would fight a funding source that's out there that doesn't cost you anything, that's only available if you want it, if you need it. And if you don't, so what? No harm, no foul. Talk to the property owners, commercial property owners and businesses all around Belmar that are not in the area but have benefited tremendously from that reinvestment in that area. That's the idea, is that it has a ripple effect, that everybody benefits. They didn't spend a thing. They didn't necessarily improve their properties, but their businesses are up. They're doing well because of reinvestment in that area. That's how it works.
Thank you.
Additional comments, questions? If not, looking for a motion for consideration.
I move to approve the resolution approving a new urban renewal plan known as the Littleton Boulevard Urban Renewal Plan, subject to revision of Section 6.12 to remove the creation of individual tax increment areas within the urban renewal area and to instead authorize the use of both property and sales tax increment financing for the entire urban renewal area.
Second.
Council, we have a motion and a second. Additional discussion?
Yes. I'd like to make an amendment to that motion to remove, there was 5 properties that I heard that want to be removed.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Hopefully the clerk has those.
Councilmember Valdez, we have those addresses.
You have those, so it's 5 is what I kept track of. And
I have 599 West Littleton, 709 West Littleton, 799 West Littleton, 1099 West Littleton, 5699 South Greenwood, and I believe Matt had 1210 to 1228 Woodlawn. And 1059 West Littleton. Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Discussion? First.
Yeah, I got a question on the last two. I mean, the other ones were offered up by the property owners, but the indication on the last two for Woodlawn was not the direct property owners. So does that cause consternation?
Perhaps we could have a follow-up to all these properties that either verbally came down or spoke for their parents, if we get a follow-up with a letter.
Say that again. What do you want to do?
Get a letter from.
You want to add to your motion, and you're looking for a friendly second?
Yeah, let's add to my motion for all those that came tonight to be removed, that those that have not already sent us a letter or email, that they furnish one to the state like within 10 days or something like that, or as Mr. Bagnell, his parents submit a letter.
Second.
Thank you.
May I ask counsel a question? Can you advise us as to standing for someone that would not be a property owner to make that request?
Well, in a perfect world, you would have the property owner here, and if I could suggest just a minor modification to Councilmember Valdez's modification, the motion to amend would be to exclude those properties upon the condition that within, and I would suggest that you put a certain number of days on it, 7 business days, 10 business days, that the property owners send a letter to the city confirming that it is their request to be removed from the urban renewal plan area.
I'll agree to that change.
So in other words, if that letter is not received, I mean, pick the number of days. I said 7 or 10. But if they do not send the letter
Valdez
within...
also already mentioned 10. So.
Okay.
10 business days would be
so if
great.
you say 10 days, then if a
days.
letter is not received by the city of Littleton within, you said 10 business days, then the property would be included. All right. So they need to confirm in writing to the city within 10 business days that they want to be excluded, and if that is received, then that property would be excluded.
I'll agree to that. You?
Second.
Thank you.
So
comments?
Yeah. Who
first from?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I have nothing.
Okay. All right. So to the city manager's attention, just so everybody knows who's getting them, or the city attorney, or how do you want to do it?
City manager's attention. That would be fine.
Okay.
Further
just for clarification.
Right.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, so here's the deal. We ran for council as citizens because we live in Littleton. Some of us work in Littleton. We've said consistently for at least as long as I've been up here that we support and have allocated a variety of resources to support small businesses. I mean, we shop in your stores, we use your services. I mean, God knows I bought a lot of stuff from Pyramid Liquors, which is awful handy too, I might add. But the implication here that we're trying to do something to the detriment of small business is counterintuitive to everything we've done up here in terms of the allocation of resources and the projects and the marketing and the economic gardening and everything else that has gone on in this community for I don't know how many years. This is another tool in the toolbox. And just, again, to say the words, there's massive amounts of protection in state statute. If you're in and you don't want to take advantage of it or you don't want to use it, don't use it. You don't have to do anything. If you guys want out, I'll vote for it. I mean, like you said, it's your property. I agree. It's absolutely your property. It's not our property. We're trying to put a program in place that basically supports efforts to assist small business any way we can. And this is one more tool. But not every tool is appropriate or applicable for every job. Not every problem is a nail. So you don't need a hammer all the time. You need it if it's the right tool. I hope that this doesn't cause future problems because we want you guys to be successful for all the right reasons. And to Mr. Reese's comments, a lot of times I think you find in these environments that property values can go up. I truly do hope that this works out to everybody's advantage, and like I said, I'll support it. I think our intent is unfortunately being misconstrued by folks who have a different agenda. Thank you.
Councilmember Stein?
I guess I'm going to echo Councilmember Stallman's comments, but have reached a different conclusion. I, too, have spent a bit of time at Pyramid, and Mr. Hancock, you've worked in my car, and, Mr. Mobius, you've provided a lot of trophies over the years to my kids on some of my sports teams that I've coached, and so I know you guys all to be, honest, hardworking businessmen, and I really thank you and recognize your contributions, significant contributions to our community. And this is in no way at all meant to be dismissive or to say, well, maybe you're good at fixing cars or selling Jack Daniels or whatever, but you don't know anything about urban renewal. That's not what this is meant to be. But I fear that there has been an atmosphere of misinformation that's pervaded this community for some time now. And I would ordinarily kind of try to take the hit on behalf of the council or behalf of staff and say, we have failed miserably to communicate the message. I would really like to say that, but that's just, I can't do that. Ms. Ricker has now come down, Mr. Reese has come down, Mr. Hoffman has come down, and very, very clearly and very pointedly and very eloquently explained exactly what it is that this is intended to do. And Councilmember Stallman reiterated that. We want to support you guys. We want to help you guys. Mr. Hancock, when you ask, is this going to diminish my property value by 5%, by 10%, by 20%? I can tell you that it will not. It will increase your property value by 5, 10, 20%. And there are examples across the country, across the state. We talked about Belmar. We have South Glen. We've got Union Station. If anybody's been down there lately, oh my God. And there are cranes all over the metro area, except for, unfortunately, in Littleton. And we need to be able to help fill our potholes and hire more policemen and buy more fire trucks or whatever. And this is one of the tools that Councilmember Stallman is referring to that you don't have to use, you don't have to take advantage of it. But if someday when you need to put in the sprinklers that Ms. Ricker referred to, you can do it. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. So I am respectfully going to oppose this motion.
Other comments from council? I'm going to tell two little stories, so bear with me a little bit on this because I'm the one that has the tight time frame as well. One is my grandmother. And my grandmother lived in a farmhouse that she and my grandfather had actually built. And they had a lot of pride in that farmhouse. And I have very fond childhood memories of inspecting eggs in that farmhouse because my grandfather and grandmother had an egg route. However, some things kind of happened to the house over time. And my cousins and I approached my grandmother, and we wanted to kind of fix up her kitchen. And she said, no, it's just fine the way it is. And it's not to say that's an exact parallel, but we waited until my grandfather took her down to the square in Medina, Ohio, and we painted her kitchen at risk. It wasn't particularly arrogance, I don't think, but it was actually very kind-hearted and an approach. And it was kind of interesting because my grandmother, rather than necessarily reacting negatively, which we feared, she was actually pretty excited, and she was glad that we followed her idea. Second story is you don't have to go very far. Go to the few blocks that Swedish Hospital occupies up in Englewood. And when they originally built the hospital, they had 2 residential properties that were on that few blocks that didn't surrender their properties to the development of the hospital. And the hospital built, and the hospital has added, and the hospital has continued to add. And one of the property owners approached the hospital and said, hey, I'd like to sell now. And the hospital basically said, no, thank you. We've built around. We don't need you. And again, not necessarily in an evil way, but kind of a business way that said folks kind of find a way to move around. And Councilmember Stein mentioned that there is construction. I'm not sure who said that no development will occur in Littleton, but some types of development won't. And some of these are challenged areas. They're in a floodplain. They have topographical issues, and we've seen those in some of our tours around the city and in some of our discussions. And I would ask folks to think about what are the possibilities that we could have, and not necessarily think about necessarily just their own property. And I know that's hard, okay? And I'm saying that from an area where I've talked to enough business owners, and they'd like to be better connected across the community. Well, that just doesn't happen when all you're doing is taking care of your own property. Could we benefit with a center bikeway that goes down Littleton Boulevard that is in part paid for through TIF financing? Don't know. Can we connect across east and west in a better way that folks can actually move? Those are some of the things that I think about that would benefit a lot of the folks that are in this room that are business owners or businesses or property owners that are there. And so that's, thinking and talking about Littleton Boulevard specifically, but I can go through and say, do we know anyone that's going to take on a project that's that big? I don't know. Do we have anyone that can take on some small projects? That would be one of the things that a framework plan will allow for, is folks actually coming in and saying, hey, here's my proposal, whether gap financing will fit or not, ends up being something that's there. What we want is not just a community that, from some outside numbers you can kind of say is thriving from an economic perspective, but we also want a community that's relevant and meaningful, not just to ourselves, but the folks that are around. And it was just so exciting. We mentioned the Elf Crawl on Saturday, to have folks from Longmont and Parker and Golden come, and Aurora. And, so I'll get kind of the corners of the globe on this. They came and said, hey, this is really neat. You guys should be doing more of this. Where folks actually wanted to come down, and I kind of felt a little bit of a pride in this. Going to some tougher items that I've heard in some of the comments has to do with the property values. You've heard information. There's information we have heard in some of our economic development presentations that the city has had, where folks have come in and demonstrated how property values have improved in conjunction with redevelopment and infill development. We've gone out to urban drainage and the Littleton Public Schools and South Suburban Park and Rec, and have talked with them. And that's not just something we did in the last few months. These are discussions we've had for 18 months or so. These are not new. And in talking with the businesses, we've had conversations, and maybe it isn't exactly the people in this room, and I apologize for some of that there might be an oversight, but I do know, based on my other professional life, that every time I send out 100 invitations, if I get 30 responses, that's good. So I'm not going to necessarily put it out there, but that not everyone picks up that invitation. Sometimes it gets in your spam folder, or it ends up your wife put it on the other counter or something like that. I can say wife because it's spouse, okay? And, those are some things that happen, and, that's kind of sorry for that. You've heard, and you have to understand, the state has some very high standards that have essentially made eminent domain and condemnation impossible. And, folks can kind of poke holes in a resolution that we have, but also practically, those are nearly impossible in what we do, in what can happen here. And to understand TIF financing. TIF financing is one of these things, when we talk about gap, it's one of those things where there's a but-for phrase. But for the improvement in the property, the reinvestment that has occurred in the property taxes wouldn't go up. Okay, and it's the element of property taxes above inflation. So when somebody says we're taking away dollars that would normally be there, it's not the normal. This is the but for. This is the incremental. It says tax incremental financing. It's the improvement that has caused those property taxes to go up because there's been an improvement in the property value. That's the reason why you do it. And Corey mentioned earlier, there isn't every good project, or every project that comes before us isn't necessarily a good project. And I know that. But in those instances, development or redevelopment or infill can occur on those properties, yes. But can the city influence some of those and say, hey, we have a bigger design or a bigger idea that's out there that says, couldn't we connect our community even better? And I know I've spoken long on this, but I want folks to take that breath and try and look beyond your own emotions, because I know that's valuable, and I can think about when my mom and dad finally were able to burn their mortgage, how good that felt for them. So I can appreciate it.
Your grandmother's story inspired me to speak. That was about 10, 20 minutes ago.
Are you still inspired?
Not as much. But first of all, I want to commend all the businesses that did come down here to say what they had to say. I've done business with, I think, most of you. Victor, I've known you for many years, Coriano Plumbing, and who doesn't know the Pyramid? Bruce, maybe more than others, but we all do to some degree.
Or Crown.
Or others. Crown, yeah, gosh, not to mention them too. But so I appreciate you all coming down here. But my position, I'm not speaking for any of you up here. My feeling is that we're not satisfying that you guys are performing well enough, so we're going to do something to help you do better. I'm encouraged by you guys, you business owners and property owners, saying we don't want your help. We can do this ourselves, and you are doing well. You're doing what you consider good for you and your families. This isn't because we think you should, it shouldn't be about we think you can do better, so we're going to help you. And as Ronald Reagan, one of my favorite presidents, said, we're from the government. We're here to help you guys. This is your prerogative on what you want to do. And if you don't want to participate, that is your prerogative. You should not feel bad about it. And thank you very much.
Okay. Council, enough discussion? And I do thank folks for coming down. We have a motion before us. The motion is an amendment to the main motion that says within 10 business days, those that can provide a written demonstration care of city manager would be excluded, or they can rescind any communication that they might have already provided. So, council ready to vote?
Vote is 5 in favor with council members Brinkman and Stein. No, the motion carries.
Okay. Council, we're back to the main motion for the urban renewal plan for the Littleton Boulevard urban renewal plan. We have it with an amendment. Any additional discussion? Council seeing none. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 5 in favor with council members Cole and Valdez voting no. The motion carries.
Thank you, Council. And in the interest of this evening, we're going to carry forward the second resolution to a special session next week, and we'll deal with the motion to appoint the city attorney. Presentation on this, I don't know.
Mayor, you need a motion to continue the meeting beyond 10.
Okay, that's the intent. Looking for a motion to continue.
So moved. Second.
Okay, there's a move and a second to continue.
The vote is 6 in favor with council member. The vote is unanimous. The motion carries.
Okay. Looking for comments on the motion to appoint. And I'll start off in saying that we've been working with City Attorney Fellman for a period of time. When the council undertook this, moving to a contract attorney was seen as a little bit of an experiment, and it has worked well, but what we're looking to do is change a little bit in going forward. We want to be in a position, though, to thank City Attorney Fellman for his service. Other folks may want to chime in, but I know that I certainly have appreciated your expertise myself, and others may want to comment.
Yeah, Ken, I think you've done an incredibly valuable job for the city. What you've done is commendable, and we've had the opportunity to talk, and you know that I feel that way in our face-to-face talk, but I want to say it publicly. We had a very difficult situation going in a number of different ways for a council, and what we needed was some stability and some real calm, mature legal advice presented in an environment in which you were basically bringing us back down to an operating level. And that was not without challenge, and you overcame them. But we did, and for the public, we did make a decision that things were so stressed at that point that we wanted to try the idea that we've used for the last period of time. And it was certainly an experiment, and everybody went into it full speed. And you knew that going into it. You've done a great job working in what was an undefined circumstance in a time of crisis. I just want to thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Deb. No, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand.
Oh, that's okay. Echoing all of those sentiments, and I think that there is, a little over a year ago, I think we were looking at making a decision on how we carried through one of the most important positions that the council administers, and that is the city attorney, and that encompasses such a broad scope of work, from the urban renewal stuff that we're working on to a personnel issue to a somebody tripped on a sidewalk and we have a liability issue or whatever the case. And Ken, you have done it with professionalism and grace, and I think that you've also been a great representative for our city. And I think that when you have had the opportunity to, represent Littleton, you have been fantastic, and we all appreciate that. In addition to that, it's been great to have you work with our staff and work with Kristen and work with council and give us all some additional learnings and education and information. And those are valuable to all of us. And I think of all the things I will never, of all the documents I've ever read from an attorney, your documents on telecommunication are by far the easiest to understand and the most thorough and the most complete. And so appreciate all your work on all of the topics, all of the issues that you've dealt with, and thank you. And you're a friend of Littleton. You will remain a friend of Littleton.
Get there.
Yeah. Ken, thanks.
Man of many words. So,
I'll be brief, but not that brief. I, of course, missed all the excitement, but suffice to say that the time that I've had an opportunity and the pleasure and the honor to work with you on a professional basis have been really enriching, and thank you very much.
Yeah. I was just echo everybody else's sentiments since we're having a smooch fest.
You're not going to read state statute about Ken, are you?
No, but I'm sure there's some in there. No, I just professional with a capital P, and it was so very much appreciated based on where we had come from. That I can't thank you enough, and certainly look forward to continuing the relationship in the future.
Good.
So I'll pile on too and just echo all of that. Thank you so much.
Mr.
Ken,
Mayor,
before you start talking.
Oh, okay.
We want to give you this. This is a picture taken by our hometown boy, Andy Marquez, of the famous Littleton Courthouse. And just as something for you to remember your fun here.
Yeah, remember something south of I-70.
Is there a cell site on that thing?
And in case you're wondering, that courthouse was built in 1908.
Actually, we should have given him a picture of, like, the CenturyLink building. That would have been.
Well, the other part was.
Do we have any more business?
We could have given him that. So. Yes, we do have.
Oh, I thought we were.
And over that time, in addition to Ken's great work, we'd like to, just want to say thank you, of course. Do you want to say something?
I would. So much so that I'm not going to do it from there. It has been my privilege and an honor to serve this city and to serve this council and your entire municipal organization. I think we all agree. I'll echo what you have said. When Littleton decided to go from a full-time city employee to a contract employee, we all wondered if that was the right thing. I think even going into this, it was my understanding that at some point Littleton would figure out that your issues are broad enough and complex enough that it would make sense to go back to having a full-time city attorney. And that's where you are now. And to the extent that I have helped you get a comfort level with getting there, I'm happy to have been part of that. What I will miss, in addition to working with all of you, which I truly do enjoy both individually and as a body, is the wonderful staff that that you have here. From Michael on down, the team that he has put together has absolutely been a pleasure to work with. They're all professional. They all really care about this community. And I will say that it has been wonderful working with Kristen and Becky and all of the folks who work in the legal department. But you will have a great city attorney going forward because she is ready to step up into this position. And to the extent that there are issues and projects I will continue to work with the city on, I look forward to doing that, and we will not be strangers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, council, looking for a motion first.
Can't get into the
You know what?
Motion.
I can't get my computer.
Yeah, the computer's hosed.
Okay.
We're talking about the motion for this one here.
I have a motion to appoint Deputy City Attorney Kristen Schledorn as the city attorney at an annual salary of $130,000. Human Relations Director Eric Von Savage is hereby directed to prepare, and the mayor is authorized to execute an employment contract with Kristen.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Council, any discussion?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So I have a comment, and I feel like I don't know what I feel like here, but I have nothing against Kristen, but I have concern about process. And I think we would have a stronger process and a greater validation in hiring Kristen if we had applicants that we could examine and interview. And I tend to think we've come out with the same decision, but I much prefer to have applicants.
Okay. Other comments? From my perspective, I think in my observation with Kristen, she's proven herself on the job and is ready for this. If you remember, one of our questions initially was, should we do this sooner? And I think she's had an opportunity to learn. And I think she is, from a composure's perspective, I would say absolutely ready. So I'm excited about this. So, okay. Council ready to vote?
Yes.
Oh.
I was just going to say one thing. Bruce and I were on the Employee Review Committee, and we spent a lot of time working on the processes and working on the review of our appointees. And on this particular one, as we were reviewing it, it became very clear that we had a system and a process that wasn't functioning at the level that we now needed it to function at. And as we reviewed our options and our alternatives, it was obvious that Kristen had been doing the work and was a strong attorney and knew our system, knew what we were up to, and the learning curve was gone. And we worked closely with council, and we worked closely with getting input and getting comments, and the process and the system ran through. I'm sorry, Peggy, that you feel that way. It's the first I've heard of that. But I want you to know, Kristen, that I'm pleased that we're moving forward with you, and I think that this is going to be a good step forward for all of us. So, congratulations.
Okay. Council ready to vote?
Yes. Yeah, after the vote.
The vote is 6 in favor with Councilmember Cole voting no. The motion carries.
And with that, thank you for those folks that are still around the table. And we're adjourned for the evening. And as I mentioned earlier, we're taking the resolution to a special session next week. Thank you.